Hi, welcome to the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And we've got a slightly different show tonight because it's Christmas. So we've invited back a few guests from our previous shows, some that are very familiar to others because they do appear a lot more regularly than others, and some not so familiar, but they have been with us in the last year or so. So first and foremost, Andy will be with us soon. He's just sorting himself out, but he hopefully will join us later on in the show. So we thought we'd crack on anyway. But first, we'll welcome Ben Emlyn-Jones back to the Paranormal Peep Show. Ben, good to see you, and how are you?
Hello, Neil. It's good to see you too. Good to see you other guys as well. I'm very well, thank you. I've just come back from the Basis Project Christmas lectures and had a really, really wonderful time. I saw you there, Neil, and I think we had great fun, didn't we?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I thought it was absolutely riveting. It was a one-day event this time. They had about 9 lectures, I think. I think I had to leave before the very final one, which was Mark Devlin. But I was familiar with his talk anyway, so I felt that I could go quite happily without having to sort of sit through it again. But the rest were really riveting. You were stuck out in the hallway, though, welcoming people in, taking their tickets and charging them money. Did you manage to catch any of it?
I did. I mean, I did. I was saying to Colin, oh, great, I don't have to work for this trip. I'm not speaking. I can relax. As it happened, I had to do a job. It wasn't as bad. It wasn't as difficult speaking. But I did have to act as a kind of receptionist, stroke security guard, stroke usher, which was actually pretty good fun. And I didn't miss much because I could actually see the speakers through the door and I could hear what they were saying. So I didn't actually miss much. So it was very, very pleasant to be involved, actually. And I'm quite glad that I ended up doing that.
And you've got a basis report coming through soon on your YouTube channel, I understand.
Yes, I am. I'm just it's just uploading at the moment, actually. It should be ready later this evening. And it is a 2-hour plus reportage of the entire event. It includes some vignettes from yourself, and I appreciate you sending me those.
Good.
So it's partly Neil has contributed to this reportage, so I hope people enjoy it. By the time you watch this video, it'll be available on my channel, Ben the JR Porter.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to seeing that. Yeah, basically, I took my own video camera along to this event. I didn't do a report like the last one I did in the summer, but I basically just filmed a few extra shots for Ben, which was quite handy, actually, because I didn't obviously know that you're going to be on the counter taking the ticket. So you're kind of a bit limited in what you could do yourself. So me doing those extra shots, I think, has probably helped a little bit, I think.
Very much, yeah. These are the kinds of shots I would try to get normally, and I couldn't. So I appreciate you being there to do that.
No problem. No problem. The invoice is in the post. Right. And also another familiar face from the Unite Planet squad this time. And that is Paul Northridge. How are you, sir?
I'm not bad, Neil. How's yourself?
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. But where's Johnny tonight?
Johnny's around, but I think he's just doing a bit of a family get-together, and then hopefully he might join in later, all being well.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, he's got some presents to hand out and receive, which is always good at Christmas. But thank you for joining us and holding the fort for Unite Planet. We'll catch up with you in a minute and find out what you guys have been up to. And also more recently this year, we again from the bases at the barge we mentioned earlier, we met Nick Sands and he kindly joined us for a show following that episode. So he's now come along for our Christmas special to update us with what he's been up to. So welcome back to Nicholas Sands. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm not so bad, thank you. I've been making Christmas wreaths at a local garden centre and been reading a very good book by Elena Dannon as well. So.
And who's that?
I think she's a contactee. She now lives in Ireland.
All right.
And a recent book's got a foreword by Laura Eisenhower, and it's a very revealing book. It's great.
Excellent. Excellent. Oh, that'll keep you busy. Now, obviously, Nick, we had some controversy with the show that you appeared on. Various people were demanding that we took it down because they thought that we were parading you before the world and taking advantage of you because they say, oh, Nick's got mental health problems. You shouldn't be parading in front of the world. You're taking advantage of him, blah, blah, blah. What's your response to those people, that sort of thing?
I would basically describe them as either directly in on a cover-up attempt or just sad trolls, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I did talk about it with Andy, and he said stuff them. So what I'm going to do, I think Andy's now made himself known, so I'm going to see if I can bring him in.
Hello.
Andy's here. Good.
Hi,
It's work-
Andy.
We got you in. We got
How
you
you
in.
doing?
Hi, Andy. How you doing?
Not bad, how you doing?
I mean,
Okay, mate.
Right. Okay. I can't see a picture yet, Andy, but
I can see it.
Oh,
I can see
Yeah,
you.
oh
but-
no, it's me. Maybe it'll come up on my screen in a second. I can see AC. Can see a picture now. Profile picture. There we go. Gotcha. Cool. Right. Okay. Well, welcome to the Paranormal Peep Show Christmas special. So we've got all the people here. We've got Andrew Chaplin. We've got Nicholas Sands. We've got Paul Northridge from United Planet, and we've got Ben Emlyn-Jones, Ben the reporter. So we were just talking about the show that we did with Nicholas Sands, where he had talked to us about his experiences with the various contactee Pleiadians and also the Greys. And we were discussing, Andy, the thing that people were telling us to take the show down because we were technically, in their viewpoint, parading Nick before the world and humiliating him and taking advantage of him, etc., etc. So, Nick, just come back again with the answer that you gave before Andy joined us, just to remind us of that.
but before we do that,
Yeah.
Neil, have you done the mince pies yet, or is that
No,
still...
I'm going to do that in a second.
Okay.
They're ready and waiting. Don't worry.
I would think basically they're either directly in on the cover up, possibly on an official payroll, or they're just sad trolls, basically.
Either one of them, yeah. Well, we don't care about them. And then, as
The
Andy
latter,
said,
probably.
we're all nuts to be on this show, didn't you? That's what you said. We're all bonkers.
It's basically various degrees of, everyone's got some kind of issues along the lines, whether they're kind of like minor issues or severe issues. Everyone's got issues, whether it's to do with depression or anxiety, especially kind of during the COVID situation. It's just kind of varying degrees. And another argument I would present is, are these people who are saying that we shouldn't have people with mental health issues, if indeed there are people with mental health issues, are they saying that we shouldn't have people on the show that have any kind of issues like that? So, that would be discrimination, surely.
Yeah, that would be absolutely come under some sort of law or discrimination act.
I mean, can you imagine, Neil, if we said we only want white people on the show, we don't want anyone that's non-white on the show?
Yeah,
that would be discrimination. So what's the difference between that and say
yeah. I mean, they would say, oh, but you're not humiliating people of color on your show or something like that. Oh, well, that
I would say, where's the humiliation?
Yeah. Well, Nick came on willingly and just decided to talk about his story, and
Exactly.
that was it. And he's obviously got more to tell us. But before we delve into those stories and find out what he's been up to, as Andy quite rightly said, these are the mince pies. They do look slightly orange on my screen, but I can assure you they are red, so they're well within date. They're well within date. So if anyone wants to take a mince pie, I shall pass it through the Skype matter transporter. So help yourself, everybody.
Neil, I understand there's a bit of a technical problem with the matter transporter, and we'll see how it goes, shall we?
Okay, see how it goes.
Well, that's weird. I've got
Very nice,
It's
thank you.
materialised. So
I've got
it's not
really a mince pie. It's not really a mince pie. It's
what is
actually
it? It's a check.
it's an envelope, and it says I don't know if you can see that.
No, it's gone blank.
It says from the Zerk.
From where?
It says from the Zerk.
From the Zerk? What's that?
Zuck, Z-U-C-K.
What's that?
Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh.
I wonder if it's a Christmas card. Do you think it's a Christmas card?
Go for it. See what he says.
See what he says. Oh, so thoughtful. Thank you so much, Mark. Oh, that's interesting. It's from Fascist Book.
Oh, hold it back a bit. Yeah.
It's from Fascist Book, and it's a 30-day ban on Facebook for posting something that he doesn't like. So that's nice. and AI is doing so well that it's actually kind of, oh, there we go.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a 30-day ban.
Dear.
I hope you put
because
down
your
for Christmas.
post goes against our community standards. Thank you so much, Mark. Fascist Book is so wonderful, censoring every single thing that we put up there. Thank you so much.
No, they contact you. They contact you personally now. That's so good of them. Andy? What did you do right?
What did I do right? Do you know what? I've lost track of it. Like literally every month I get some kind of community standards warning. It's usually things like false information or partly false information, which it turns out in mainstream news is just people with their opinions. Fact checkers are nothing more than opinion checkers, and if you've got the wrong opinion, then they'll put it as misinformation. I think if you get 5 of these within a year or a 6-month period, whatever it is, then you get a 30-day ban. So obviously I've struck up another 5th one. And so I've got a 30-day ban. Thank you so much for censoring everything that we do. Facebook, you fascist bunch of bastards.
So when does this run till?
It happened yesterday. So it's going to be kind of mid-January.
So you're going to be quiet on Facebook for a bit then, towing the line a bit.
Weirdly, I kind of need it because I think that actually I spend too much time on Facebook. And when you think about it, other than kind of like spreading information and kind of like making people aware of things such as, for instance, not last year, in the year 2018, there were almost 30,000 deaths from flu and pneumonia in the UK and Wales. That's excluding Scotland and excluding Northern Ireland. England and Wales, 30,000 deaths, flu and pneumonia. Where was the hysteria? Where was the masks? Where was the social distancing in 2018? So things like that will flag up on Facebook as false information, partly missing information, blah, blah, blah. Apart from spreading, apart from kind of like informing people of stuff like that, Facebook doesn't actually do anything really. So what I'm going to actually do is use my time to actually build my own website up and kind of work on my events. If there's any events left next year, thanks for Chris Whitty and his bunch of idiots. I mean, why people trust Neil Ferguson and his charts have got nothing right for the past 2 years. None of their models have turned out right, and yet we're still trusting those bunch of absolute chimpanzees with stats and charts and figures. And so a bit of a rant, but I think it's needed. This is how I kind of vent. So this is kind of therapy to me.
Well, we always call conspiracy theorists as well as paranormalists and things like that. And you sent me that thing before you was banned from Facebook.
Yes.
About we were talking about before you came on the Jesse Ventura show.
Yes, that's right.
So I remember the Jesse Ventura show. I saw some episodes, but obviously I must have missed that one. I didn't like what he did to David Icke. I think that was unnecessary, and I think it was a bit sensationalist. But generally speaking, I quite like Jesse Ventura. And this was, as I say, I think it was conspiracy theories with Jesse Ventura. The video, I'm actually looking at it now. I could still access Facebook, but it's on 2009, and the doctor's name is
It's Rima Labo. I remember this.
Let me have a look. The doctor's name.
I'm still alive.
It's Rima Labo is still around, I think.
Okay.
But she's gone quietly. Sorry, Andy, I remember this very well. I hadn't actually thought about it for a while, so I appreciate you reminding me of this, because even though you can't post on Facebook, you can still use Messenger, so we can keep in touch. But yeah, Rima Labo is a naturopath, and she's quite big on organic foods and things like that. And she said in this, is this going to go onto YouTube?
Yeah.
Okay, I better be careful what I say. Instead of the thing they're trying to give you, the medication, I'll call it the V word. She was saying in this. Well, Andy, you could tell the story because it's your story. Sorry.
Yeah. Actually, Ben, do you want to spell her name out so if people want to search for her on YouTube, they can?
Rima.
Rima.
Yeah, her surname is Labo. Yeah, Laibow. Laibow.
Labo.
I think it's the Natural Solutions Foundation she started, and she often speaks at conferences, and she's challenged Monsanto and people like that. So I think she's a good lady. And this interview she did with Jesse Ventura, I do like Jesse Ventura. I think he became a bit too close to the mainstream media, and this is why he went down a bad path, I think, and said some pretty awful things. But I do think he meant well, and his show was actually surprisingly good for something that went out on that platform.
Yeah.
But you could tell the rest of the story because it's quite chilling what was talked about in
So basically
13 years ago.
13 years ago, 2009 is Jesse Ventura conspiracy theories, and what she basically did, she flew in. I thought that was slightly dramatic. Now, whether it's kind of true or not, she flew into the United States to give this interview, and then she's flying back out again.
A small aeroplane, I think.
That maybe she would be kind of like arrested or taken out or killed or something like that. May be true, may not be true, but never mind. Her main message was that in around about 2003, this is from memory, about 2003, in one of her natural, I think it was like a convention or something, or maybe kind of like where she was doing her natural therapies, she had a head of state. She said it was a female head of state. And she said that this head of state leaned over to her and she said, well, you do know that the big cull is coming. And back then, of course, back in 2003, like only a few people were really into things like David Icke and the New World Order and Alex Jones and that kind of thing. It was back then it was very much viewed as crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy theory nut jobs. Obviously now it's all coming true. But back then she was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean the big cull? And she said, this head of state said, well, it's time to thin the herd, thin the population. It's time to get the numbers down. And she even went into detail that, and I think this is viewing UN reports or kind of like WHO reports, that there was going to be a vaccine that was going to be given. Now, she said nasal vaccine, but of course, plans can change. And she said what was going to happen is that like a big flu pandemic, and I think she used that word pandemic, was going to hit the world, and people would be given this flu thing, and either people would be sterilized or they would be bumped off. I mean, there's no other way of putting it. And it's worth bearing in mind that these little jibbity-jabs that are happening at the moment, the pharmaceutical companies that are doing this have absolutely no legal recourse if something goes wrong. If you die, your family gets no compensation. If you are blinded, if you go deaf, if you get paralyzed, if you have a heart attack, there is nothing you can do. They are immune from prosecution. And it's worth noting that I think I'm right in saying that in the United States, the only industry that is absolutely immune from prosecution within the medical community are the jibbity-jabs.
That's very, very interesting. And they do have a kind of compensation scheme in this country for medical jibbity-jabs that go wrong, but it's only maximum of £120,000. And that is, you got to prove as much as you can how much it's affected your life. So, like loss of limbs or loss of ability to walk or major heart surgery or heart attacks or loss of life, even the max.
And they have a get out clause, which is coincidence. Prove that the jab did anything. So let's say you have a little jibbity jab and you go blind. Oh, well, you might have had an underlying condition. Or all of those athletes that are dropping on the floor. I've literally seen this in the news. There are athletes around the world that are dropping to the floor with cardiac arrests. And I've seen news headlines saying it's just a coincidence. It's coincidental that at the same time that jibbity-jabs are being pushed, that athletes, it's
can you imagine incredible. In PlayStation games now with FIFA or Champions League, games on PlayStation, you have a little tick box, make it as realistic as you can. So whilst you're playing, these players start dropping down dead by themselves. Cool. So, well, that's obviously just a psychic prediction that lady made. It's nothing really, it's after all, we're on YouTube, so we're only talking about psychic predictions that lady made.
I don't think it was psychic, Neil.
No, I'm just joking.
Psychic means kind of like getting information out of the ether or things that you shouldn't know about. From what I was understood, she got it from people that she'd met, and indeed from WHO or UN medical records or kind of like future population records. And it's no conspiracy theory. In the London Times, there was a report about a billionaires club discussing global depopulation and how to reduce the world's population. This was before all of the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. And if you have a look at all the names that were listed, they're all the ones that are allegedly hopped over to Jeffrey Epstein's island. So you got Bill Gates, you got Bill Clinton, you got the Rockefellers, you got the Rothschilds and all that kind of thing, all the big kind of like players. and you know, it's just incredible if you dig. And I know that a lot of people don't like Alex Jones. I do like Alex Jones. He's very big, he's very brash, he's very kind of like, yeah, but I think he's on the right track, and I think his heart is in the right place. I don't think he's a Jesuit shill that some people seem to think he is. I don't think he's that. He's controversial, but if you look at some of the things that he says, the actual documents that he pulls up, and when he pulls them up, he puts them on the screen and you can view it and you can read it. He's along the right lines. These people, the global elitists, they want global depopulation. There's no doubt about it. The question is how would they go about
deplatformed
it
as well? Wasn't he deplatformed?
Oh yes. Oh,
yeah.
Of course he was. Social media, wiped out. David Icke was wiped out. The communist social media, and I'll use that word, communist. They are communist social media platforms that love censorship. They hate freedom of speech. They hate people having their own opinion, and they just wipe out anyone they don't like. And it is, quite frankly, terrifying.
Nick, with regard to your communications with Pleiadians and such, have they ever talked about this kind of stuff to you?
The only thing I can think of is the Michael Horn representative of the Billy Meyer case.
Okay, what was that about?
Yeah, he's talked about the coronavirus killing at least 500 million people.
Wow.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And when was that? Was that like years ago, that prediction? Or?
It was on a radio interview just several months ago, I think.
I see. Okay. And so who is this guy in connection to Billy Meyer? Is he like a fan of his or something?
Yeah, he calls himself a connectee. He's had several sightings. And he's like the official American representative of the Billy Meyer material. And he's got like a website that sells official Billy Meyer videos and books and things like that.
Right. I seem to recall I've seen this guy perhaps doing radio interviews and things. If it's the guy I'm thinking of. Yeah. And Billy Meyer's still around, isn't he?
Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah. So do you know if he's had the old jibs?
I very much doubt it.
They say roll up your sleeve. He says, which arm?
Yeah. Put it in the one that's missing.
Yeah.
Did you on a slightly lighter note, because I think we need a bit of a lighter note, did you hear of that guy in Italy that brought in a prosthetic arm to get jib-jabbed?
Oh, really?
Yes. So there's this guy, I don't know how he thought he'd get away with it, but obviously kind of like in the EU, they're making it mandatory, which is like, I mean, Parliament recently said that that COVID passports do apply, but you can have a lateral flow test. But in the EU, you have to have a jib-jab in order to get a vaccine passport to go to all restaurants and stuff. So in Italy, this guy brought in literally a fake arm, sat down and was expecting to get a little jib-jab. But luckily the nurse, or unluckily, the nurse kind of worked out what was going on. And I think he got arrested for it. But
well, at least he was, I wouldn't say making a stand, but fantastic.
He's harmless.
Wow. Harmless, yeah. So back to Nick then. Did you get any emails through from people regarding the questions from viewers that were keen to ask the Pleiadian contacts you've got? Any particular questions?
I only got two emails in the end. I got one. Yeah, I got one from an American guy from Arizona called Chuck Kenny. And we were trying to set up a dialogue. He didn't seem to like email for some reason, and he wanted encrypted communication. So what happened was one of his emails got redirected into my spam, so I missed him for a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then he stopped communicating. So I think I scared him off when I mentioned GCHQ and Memworth Hill, basically.
Right. Did he have any questions, though, for the contacts you've got?
Did he have any questions? I think he was going to forward some, but the communication line went down.
Okay, interesting. And what about the other one? Did you get any success with that one?
The other guy didn't ask any questions as such. He was an Irishman living in Kent, and he's saying he'd worked in a lot of like stately homes and military establishments doing various DIY and stuff. And he says basically the military saw me as some kind of a super soldier for the shoot down.
Right. Would he have been privy to certain information by doing this sort of work that he was doing in these military establishments? He was overhearing things, or?
Yeah, he seemed to have contact with some top military people that were around at some of these establishments.
I see. Interesting. So have you had any more contacts with your Pleiadian people since our last show?
Yeah, I've done a recent contact report where they're talking about a possible partial pole shift. And it says if it happened, it's quite likely that it won't happen, but they wanted me to get it down on paper anyway. Now they were saying if there was a partial pole shift, the UK's weather patterns and jet stream would change significantly.
Right.
And we could end up getting a lot of sand from the Sahara Desert deposited on us.
That won't be the first time we've had sand from the Sahara Desert come to us, but normally the Gulf Stream and weird tornadoes and things. So does that mean that we'll sort of move slightly south or something, or in our orbit or position in space or something?
Yeah, they didn't say specifically. They just said some kind of a partial pole shift that could affect the weather patterns and the major jet stream that we get from the Atlantic.
Because I mean we wobble on a pole axis anyway, don't we, Ben? Every few thousand years, 10,000 years, we're on a slightly wobbly planet as such.
Yeah, the Earth does change it goes through various cycles. I mean, the ones we know about are most obvious are the annual cycle of the seasons, and of course the 24-hour cycle of the day, the solar, the day, but the rotation of the Earth, and the Moon, of course, has its own cycles, and there are longer term cycles though than those lasting thousands of years, and these are related to all kinds of things. I mean, they are actually encoded into some ancient monuments, such as Angkor Wat in Cambodia, which indicates that ancient people knew about these long-term cycles. There's also symbols that the people in ancient Ireland knew about it too, because the various monuments are lined up to face the sunrise at all points within this cycle. They're like the precessional cycle of over 25,000 years. It's a very long cycle. The Earth's climate also changes naturally over time. And indeed, where we are at the western, on an island off the western coast of the European continent, we do receive quite a lot of extreme weather, both cold and hot. And depending on which way the wind's blowing, whether it's the polar vortex or the transatlantic trade winds, or it's, again, winds from North Africa and things like that, we can have all kinds of different weathers here. So there's no surprise there. Definitely.
Interesting that the Pleiadians are on the case, though, by the sounds of it.
It's an interesting thing. I mean, Nick, I don't know if you know Carol Noonan.
No.
She is also in contact with the Pleiadians, and she's said a lot of interesting things. And it's something I take. I know some people in the UFO world don't want to know about this, but I take contactee channeling very seriously.
Yeah. I'm in contact with a contactee called Laura Sayers.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, she's from the north of England, isn't she?
Yeah, Burnley.
Yeah, she's part of the Probe group or something.
Yeah, Friends of Probe.
Yeah, Friends of Probe. That's it. Yeah. I thought you'd know her, Ben. Actually.
Oh, Laura Sayers. Yes, I do. Sorry,
Yeah,
I know Laura
yeah.
Sayers. She actually was organised the conference during its last few incarnations before it sadly ended. Yeah, but I do know her. Yeah, Carol is better known as Soma Ara. Maybe you're familiar with that name, Nick.
No, could you spell it out? I'll try and remember it.
I'll send you a link, Nick, because we did have an interview with her about a year and a half to 2 years ago. So we'll send you a link to that show, and you can take a look at it. And it's definitely on my YouTube channel for those that want to find it with Carol.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
There are beings watching. There are beings from other worlds, I think, that are interested in what we're doing on Earth. They're interested in our predicament, and they're interested in our progression as a species.
Do you think they're trying to unite us all rather than fight us?
I don't know exactly what their plans are. I think they believe that this world could be better, it could improve, and I agree with them. It could I'm not a utopian. I don't believe in paradises on Earth, but I do believe that what we could have on this planet would be an enormous improvement on what we currently have to endure. And it's got a lot to do with the fact that we are in a fallen state, to use a biblical term. And as a result, we have this Illuminati that have come in, and we know what they're doing because their fingerprints are all over the governments of the world and the state and corporations, and what they're doing at the moment is a very obvious example of that, which is probably a good thing, actually.
Have you guys heard about Uri Geller's latest claim?
Oh, he always makes predictions around Christmas, doesn't he?
So he's basically saying that aliens are preparing to make contact with Earth. That's his latest. I think
yeah. The thing is, they've been in contact with Earth for donkeys. I think he's missed a boat on that one.
Yeah, that guy will do anything to keep people talking.
I think what he probably means is kind of like in a way that we is like in unmistakable.
More openly.
So kind of. Yeah, well, people talk about UFOs landing on the White House lawn and that kind of thing, or something that is so visible and so in your face, the mainstream media can't hide it. So whereas in the past they've gone ha little green men and just laughed it all off, something whereby if every city in the world had like suddenly hovering discs, you wouldn't be able to, you couldn't just poo that. So I think what he means is kind of along the lines of that. So we'll see.
You could argue that all these little jibby-jabbies are there to inoculate us against the aliens that are about to land, to protect us from them.
do you know what? My feeling on the jibby-jab is that I think in a way it is ET related, and this is how I think it is ET related. I think the global elite are in a panic. I think the global elite are following orders from dark masters. So whether that's through secret societies, Masonic groups, or whatever, I think they're getting their orders from high above. I think the orders from high above are probably something along the lines of, you need to create the new world order now. You need to get every citizen absolutely controlled as a complete slave, ready for when we return, and it needs to be now. Make no mistake, we are coming back. You need to do it now. Hence jibbity-jab hysteria over basically a mild sniffle at this this particular stage in time.
Yeah,
that's it. That's interesting, isn't it? Because up until now, all this imposition of the New World Order has been going at a very slow pace. Indeed, it needed to, so that people wouldn't notice it. Now that pace has increased very suddenly, very radically. I was talking to Mark Devlin about this, and I said, however awful things are at the moment, maybe we should take hope from this, and maybe it's actually a good sign. They've broken cover, they're dashing for the finish line way too early, and that could only mean something spooked them. They're not confident of achieving their goal. I think they're in serious trouble. I don't know exactly what the nature of that trouble is, but the whole V word and everything to do with it is connected to as a last ditch attempt to get the job done. Now that you mentioned, it's interesting what you said about inoculating us from the aliens. I mean, I don't know if it's possible to inoculate someone medically against aliens. I mean, something to stop us seeing them, maybe. I don't know.
Ben, I just want to say quickly, do you guys remember Colin Sugrin?
Yeah.
Yes.
So he came in on the Apollo kind of talks and the moon landing things. I don't know if you've added him as a friend, but if you look at his timeline, he's got a physics background, and he's been doing a lot of digging in terms of what's really going on in terms of nanoparticles, AI technology, integration of nano and AI, and what he thinks is the integration of AI nanotechnology within the jibbity-jabs. And he's pulled up various sources, and this is kind of like, I don't know if you call it mainstream, but put it this way, companies and tech companies and nanotech companies talking about integrating humans into computers and almost using our own nervous system as antennas using nanotechnology. And he goes into quite considerable detail about cell technology and nanotechnology. It goes way over my head. I don't understand it. But from a layman's point of view, it looks like there's a possibility that these jibbity-jabs might have something to do with interfacing the Internet of Things. And there's also mainstream things that he's come across in terms of controlling human behavior versus microwaves. And so literally the tinfoil hat, the conspiracy theorist tinfoil hat has validity because if we are walking antennas for God knows what kind of electromagnetic radio waves or whatever it is, how are they controlling us? Where are they? Where is this going? And if anyone wants to say, "Oh, that's a load of conspiracy theory nonsense," well, have a look at Havana syndrome. Havana syndrome were U.S. ambassadors and ambassador workers in Havana that kept getting nausea, kept getting headaches, kept getting fatigue, and it turns out that there was beams being hitting their windows that were electromagnetic, causing horrendous health effects. So this is something to really be concerned about.
In mobile phones, mobile phones. Apparently, I read this. I can't remember. Only very recently, someone's doing a talk on mobile phones, and they said in the very, very small print of all mobile phone leaflets, it says, "Do not hold mobile phones next to your head."
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what? Why? That's what they're designed for, aren't they? Crazy. Paul, we'll come to you now. Give you a chance to have a little bit of conspiracy theory stuff. You've been busy with Johnny doing your shows over the last year. I mean, for you, you've been busy doing the News from Nowhere, which is a nice little sort of 10-minute kind of episode you're doing, catching up on the week's news and things like that. What for you in the past year has been quite striking and unnerving?
Well, definitely about the jibby-jabs. I think that's one of the bigger things. And footballers just, like Andy just said as well about footballers, you know, just falling, you know, collapsing on, you know, it doesn't happen very regular, you know, in normal, you know, decades. But now it just seems to be like so many footballers and athletes, rugby players, they're all just like collapsing, which is quite concerning, really.
Yeah. And do you know anybody that's had any problems after having the jibby-jabs personally?
Personally, yes. I've had a couple of people that I know that's had problems afterwards. Really?
Serious or just mild or?
Serious, yeah.
Really? Crikey.
Yeah. I don't want to say too much, but yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So I don't know if people are aware, but you can report these things through the yellow card reporting system, which is buried deep within the NHS website. The UK column alerted me to this kind of system, which is set up by the government and the jibby-jabbers. And the idea is that doctors or patients, anyone that's suffered any adverse reaction or someone that's died, can report it on this yellow card reporting system. And the people that are responsible for it are then meant to analyze this information and then thinking, okay, we've got so many people dying of the jibby-jabby or so many people having serious adverse reactions to it, we better look into it and analyze why. But according to UK column, they're not doing anything with the information other than just collecting it like stamps, and they're not doing anything at all. And they're still pushing for people to carry on having the jibby-jabbies. So, you know, all these boosters and things like that. I mean, there'll be more boosters next year, maybe with another variant. I don't know, but it's where does it end? It's getting quite scary.
I do know some people who have said that their work colleagues were all fully boosted, and loads of those have had full-on COVID.
What, since the jibby-jabbies?
Since double jibby-jabbed.
Yeah.
Not exactly ending up in hospital, because the idea, I think, is to try and lessen the disease so you don't end up in hospital. But they've certainly had it. So this, you know, the whole definition of a V word is that it's supposed to be something that prevents it. You know.
Yeah, but there was this guy on speaking in the European Parliament, and he's from one of the former Soviet Union countries, and I forget which one, but he talks very good English, and he was saying on UK column, on this clip they played out, that he said that they were promised by all the vaccine, makers, well over a year ago, that they had 95% efficiency or performance, that, you know, it's going to solve all the problems. And so all the European governments signed on, yes, thank you very much, we'll take them all. And they said there's very little risk to the public. And he said, in fact, the opposite is true. They're not very efficient at protection. And in fact, they are pretty badly dangerous. And although on Facebook, they have these things saying all these COVID vaccines go through safety tests, safety test. You might put it through a safety test, but they don't tell the result of the safety test. So I could say, well, I'm going to do a safety test with Andy on top of a building, and I put Andy through a safety test by pushing him off it. Now, I'm not going to report whether he survived or not, but I put him through a safety test. That's what they're reporting as a safety test.
Do you know what? In the advertising industry, they call those weasel words. Weasel words in advertising are words that sound great and they sound fantastic, and you sit there and think, yay, but they mean nothing. That's what a weasel word in advertising is. To back you up on that, Neil, if people want to go to cnbc.com, Israel says Pfizer COVID V word is just 39% effective as Delta spreads, but still prevents severe illness. It used to be something like 95% efficacy. Now it's down to 39%. And that was in July. That was on Friday, the 23rd of July of this year. Wow. Now, if anyone knows about NLP or hypnosis, again, looking at the UK column, because I watch it every week, it's on 3 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, live on their website, but they also have episodes you can catch up on later on, because it's run from 1 till 2 p.m. live, but you can watch it in the evening or something on their website. They used to be on YouTube till they were thrown off it when they had an interview with someone that got Guillain-Barré syndrome. I can't remember the name of it. Guillain-Barré, I think it's pronounced. Syndrome is where this person who had taken the jibby-jabbies suddenly became paralyzed and they couldn't walk, and they were severely hampered with it. And she was telling her story of her husband. And because she was telling the truth as it happened to her, she was banned from YouTube. Well, not she, the program that featured her was banned from YouTube. And so now the UK column have gone to different websites like Odyssey and Rumble and brand new YouTube, that kind of stuff. Now, I was reading. Oh, that's right. I picked up some episodes of the Light newspaper that Ben was handing out at the bases lectures, because you had a load of those newspapers on your table, didn't you, Ben?
Yeah, there's a very, very good newspaper. It's on its 17th edition now, 17th issue, and it's well worth getting hold of. It's very easy to get hold of, and you usually order them in bulk and give them to your friends and things like that. It's
really good. So I took a couple of issues and I was reading some, and one was an interview with the Vernon Coleman doctor, who used to be a columnist in the Sun newspaper back in the 80s, but he's gone very alternative. He's kind of like a David Icke of doctors, if you like. And he basically was saying that with regards to hypnosis, he said he's been talking to hypnotist friends, and he said that with hypnosis, they give you words, keywords, and they give them in 3 kind of sort of strikes, like you will sleep, or you will feel, or you must wake, or something like that. And he says the government have got 3 keywords in all their statements. The British government, I don't know about other governments, like,
hands, face, wash,
save. Yeah, hands, face, wash, things like that. And Boris's latest words is get boosted now. Yeah. And so they said they're like hypnotic words. And he says, just remember the words, get boosted now. And that's the kind of thing. Oh, I'm programmed. So you got to be careful of these things. I'm not saying that he is trying to hypnotize people, but just be open to that possibility.
No, you're absolutely right, Neil. And another thing that UK column also talk about is nudge units. And they're actually, I didn't know this, they're actually army brigades that are psychological warfare. And I think the British have something like 77 Brigade or something. But there's, as well as military kind of like coercion, let's call it what it is, psychological coercion units, there's also these nudge units, these think tanks. And another thing they do, because I've seen similar reports, Neil, is that as well as getting key words across, they'll use what's known as anchor points. I don't really know too much about this, but they'll have kind of like they'll make a certain symbol. Tony Blair apparently used to do this when they're getting things across. Maybe we do it subconsciously as well. Trump does this as well. But it's a way of getting somebody to remember it, almost like a Pavlov's dog situation.
And Boris is always doing the thumbs up type of thing to people.
Maybe that's his. Maybe that's because what do you think when somebody gives you the thumbs up? It's okay. So get your jib-jab.
Get your jib-jab. All sorted type of thing.
It's good. It's okay. Trust me. You're one of the crowd. You're one of us. Kind of thing.
Okay, changing tack slightly then, moving on from the jibbity-jabs, jib-jabs. I was watching a YouTube video about a month ago, and it was something that I had forgotten about, but it was something that came back to me when I started watching it, because it was this guy talking about the program called Out of This World. I don't know if anyone remembers that. It used to be on in the 90s with Carol Vorderman. And I remember watching this particular episode, and this guy, who's a computer guy, was analyzing this show and talking about, because he's a computer nerd guy, so he knew about computers. And this program featured the BBC microcomputer from 1984. And it is when the Margaret Thatcher's government were handing out computers to the schools. You might have used some of these if you're, around at school in the 80s, BBC microcomputers. They weren't connected to the internet. They were just basic commands like DOS things, basic, punch and / and all that kind of stuff. And it was in the show that it had this teacher that took a BBC microcomputer back from the school, because they said practice on this so you can teach the kids how to use it. So he took this computer home with him, and he's writing out basic stuff on it, getting used to it. And anyway, they go off to the pub one evening, and they come back and they find there's an extra file saved on their computer, and they're thinking, what's this? And it seemed to be someone calling himself LC or something like that. And it was a message to them, but it was like a very cryptic message. They thought, what's all this? It's like almost like a poem or something had been written. And so they sort of thought, well, it must be one of their friends that sneaked into the house and having a bit of joke with them. So they decided to write a message back. And again, remember, this is not connected to the internet. It's a good 12 years before the internet was online. So it wasn't connected up to any phone plugs or nothing like that. No one even knew what the internet was. So they just thought, oh, they'll write a joke back. Who's this? Or something like that. And then basically the guy, whoever it was that was typing these messages, was claiming that he was from the reign of Henry VIII. And basically his name was Lucas, and I can't remember the surname, but he sort of wrote in a very old English style. So it's almost like the writings of Chaucer or Shakespeare, that kind of, thou art hast seen the blah, blah, blah. And he described that he was using a box, but he called it a box of lights. He didn't call it a computer. He says, I have been given a box of lights, blah, blah, blah. And this went on for about a year, and they actually changed computers and things like that. And yet these messages were still coming through. They're also getting poltergeist type phenomena occurring in the cottage that they had this computer in. So the wife came home and found one day all the kitchen furniture was stacked up to the ceiling in the corner of the room, very weirdly. And she actually saw this guy in the living room, and he saw her. Like she saw him in the 16th century, but he wrote on the computer sometime later, I saw the fair lady of the house. In other words, from his own time zone, he had seen her. And it just got weirder and weirder. So they started to communicate more messages back to him. And they said, look, we're from the year 1984 in the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. And this bloke, Lucas, said, oh, I thought you were the person that gave me the strange box of lights from the year 2109, who appeared, this is it, who appeared in a blaze of green light in my fireplace. So basically he was saying that someone from the year 2109 appeared in his fireplace like a portal in a blaze of green light, gave him this box of lights and said, here, use this, and presumably taught him how to use it. And he was now communicating through time to these people in 1984. So they decided to try and investigate, well, who is this person in 2109? So they basically got into this BBC micro and typed, call in 2109. And like an hour or two later, they got a message from 2109. And basically it was some person in the future. And they said, look, we can't tell you everything that's going on, but knowing that you do have a destiny and what you're doing is really, really important type of thing. And it was just a fascinating tale.
Where can we read up on this, Neil? I wanna read...
I'll send you some links later on.
Yeah.
It's basically, if you could type in calling 2109 on YouTube, it might come up. But the show was called Out of This World with Carol Vorderman, i.e. the brain mathematician girl from Countdown. And I don't know which episode it was, but certainly in the program that I saw where there's this computer nerd talking about the episode, he actually gives the links in his show on YouTube to the original show. So it's worth watching, say, the original Carol Vorderman show and then watching his interpretation of it. It's absolutely fascinating.
I think I found it. I found
Yeah, it's worth watching it. And they had this other guy that came in who was an absolute no-nonsense skeptic who knew about computers and everything, and he investigated it. And according to the forums that he later went on the internet, he said, yeah, I went on. He says, I can't explain it. He says, I'm telling you, something weird was happening with this. You know, they weren't tricking because they didn't know how to do tricks. They even had people from the SPR, the Society of Psychical Research, come in, and they didn't compile a report. They basically said, oh, well, we think you're faking it, but we don't know how. They had an idea, or they suggested that maybe they'd placed a secret microphone in the room. And whilst the SPR were typing messages, they were somehow listening, the people that own the house, through the microphone, listening to the keystrokes and working out what letters they were typing so that they could come back later on and type a response, you know? Yeah. And then another theory they came up with.
Sound the same. How can you?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So the other theory they came up with was that somehow messages were being sent from their friend via the electrical cables in the house that then plugging into the thing, you know, which you can do.
This is the thing about skeptics. They call us crazy, that we believe in crazy things, and yet those explanations are the craziest, most non-plausible things I've ever heard. Yeah,
I know. It's actually easier to believe in time travel than these weird messages that they were thinking were happening in 1984. But yeah, it's a freaky thing. I mean, who believes in time travel? I mean, Ben, you say that it's possible to travel forward in time or something, but you don't believe it's possible to travel back in time?
From what I've seen of what we know about the laws of the universe, you could travel forward in time. That's actually not difficult comparatively. You just have to travel very fast. There's actually a chap called Valery Polyakov, who's an astronaut, who spent 13 months on the Mir space station between 1994 and early 1995. And he did travel 2.8 milliseconds into the future. That has actually been established as fact. This is according to Einstein's laws of special relativity. Now, traveling backwards in time is a different matter. There's all kinds of reasons why it's just not possible. It is paradoxes and things like that as well. So, but however, what you can have a situation where you can create the experience of time travel in the many worlds hypothesis of Rupert Everett and several other people. This is that for every quantum fluctuation that takes place in the universe, and there are so many of them you can never count them, different universes are created. In other words, both outcomes are played out simultaneously in two separate parallel universes, which means there's a huge number of universes out there. I mean, infinite for practical purposes. And that somewhere out there, there's a universe which is identical or even closely resembles Earth's own past. Within that universe, there may well be people there who are able to communicate using various methods, what we might call extrasensory perception, and other methods. And using electronics is a very, very common thing. We've had that with ghosts and other paranormal phenomena, poltergeists. There's very often interference with electronics. Don Phillips, of course, who does his EVP experiments and things like that. Electronic voice phenomena is very, very, very common. I suspect that what we're talking about here is something small. It's probably that rather than a literal Doctor Who style time travel. Although it's still interesting to try and see if this person they're communicating with at the time of Henry VIII, whether he could be identified.
Well, apparently he wrote a book. The sequel part of the story was that this guy back in 1625, although he gave himself the name of Lucas, his name was Thomas. He actually gave a false name because he was a bit scared in case there was repercussions on his life in those times. So he did write a book, and he says, I've written a book about my life and my communications with you people. And he buried it somewhere in Oxford. Oddly enough, is nice. Where you live, so you can go digging for it, Ben.
If I find it, yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, so it has been mentioned that there's possible clues as to where it might be. Perhaps I don't know, but
I'm a local man. I might be able to interpret the clues better because I'm a local man.
So if you I'll send you the link after the show,
Thanks.
and you can watch it all, see what you make of it. And there's a few links the guy has given on his interpretation of it, of follow-up podcasts with other people, so they might have some interesting takes on it all. But the interesting thing is that he says the visitor came from 2109 and appeared in his chimney. Now, my own research into the paranormal is that a lot of spirits do come through doorways and can come through chimneys. So when this was put about in 1984, in the story, I'm thinking that's quite pertinent to me anyway, at least. And he appeared in a green light, but he actually stepped out and handed Lucas or Thomas, whatever his name was, this. He called it something or other, but he said, for want of a better words, it's a strange box of lights, and that's all he could call it. He didn't have the word computer or anything like that. It's just a freaky story. It's really, really interesting, and it would make a bloody good science fiction film if they ever did it. Worth a watch.
Of course, if it's coming from, let's say, it was like some kind of like time traveling experiment from 2109, we don't know what that box of light would be, because their computers in 2109 would be very, very different from our computers now. So how a box of light would look like might be completely different from our iMacs or PCs. Absolutely.
And the interesting, also the other side angle, little snippets of information which make it interesting, is that this Lucas, when he refers to talking with the man from 2109, he said he speaketh words that I thought was of the devil, but after a while I believed him. So in other words, he thought he was the devil coming into his chimney, and it really shit him up. He said, I've never been so scared in my life, type of thing, in his old English way of putting it. Yeah. So it's very interesting. So I'll send you all guys the link, and you can watch it, and obviously people on YouTube, you can watch it as well. Very worth.
Lucas gave a false name because of censorship. How things never change.
Yeah. And unfortunately, 2109 didn't talk about jibby-jabbers, which I would have loved to have found out if they did. Yeah. But I did see an interesting science fiction film on Amazon Prime the other night, which has a lot of really weird stuff going on there. And I won't ruin the ending, but it's called Predestination, I think it's called. Or Predetermined, doesn't it? It's an Australian film with Ethan Hawke's in, an actor called Ethan Hawke's, kind of unknown, but he basically plays a guy that travels through time to try and stop terrorist bombs going off through the different the 1970s. But his time travel machine is basically a violin case with almost like, like on a briefcase, you have the little locks. He dials up the year that he wants to go to, and then as long as he's holding it, he travels through time with it. It's quite an interesting thing. I think he's on the fiddle.
Talking of terrorists, how is Anthony Fauci?
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely jamming through time. Yeah. But, Nick, back to you with like your visitors from space. Have they ever talked about time travel or anything like that to you?
Yeah, it was the main thing that the reptilian occupation force tried to use me for against the Pleiadians on the base.
Okay.
They were aware that the Pleiadians have got some kind of time travel technology, and they were obsessed with trying to get it, basically.
Right. Okay. And are they going backwards and forwards in time? What are they doing with it?
They use it just as a faster type of travel and to try and monitor things, I guess. Okay.
Do they actually try and change things in the past, do you think? Or
no, they have certain laws against changing things. It's sort of forbidden to go back and change things.
Right. So in other words, they're saying that you can go back in time, but you're not to go around screwing it up. A bit like the Star Trek Prime Directive.
Yeah.
I suppose because of the butterfly effect of what could happen. It goes back to the whole thing of kind of like, if you kill your grandfather, how would you exist to be able to go back and kill your grandfather? Kind of
but that's if you go back into an alternate version of the history, like the many worlds theory. You go back to the many worlds theory, which is where you can kill your grandfather in one universe, but then you hop into the other universe where you didn't kill him or something,
Yeah.
It wouldn't be literal time travel. It would be the same experience as time travel. It means you could do all these things. You do what you like wherever you go, and you could come back to your own world at the end, and everything will be normal. It will be as you left it.
You hope.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah. But I mean, if you could go back in time, I think I would definitely change it so we didn't have COVID and jibby-jabbies and things. You'd have to follow. You'd have a whole history, a bit like a great Terminator scenario. You've been sent back to assassinate Fauci
Dr.
or something.
Fauci.
Yeah. Take him out.
I'm not saying that we should, by the way, just to kind of clarify that. But if hypothetically we were going to go back and let's just say stop him from doing gain of function research in Wuhan biological weapons lab in China, maybe things would be a bit different.
And you can't go blow the lab up in China because that released all their spores to the world anyway. So you've got to be pretty careful. Yeah. And on Unite Planet, what have you ever discussed time travel, Paul, or anyone ventured? I mean, we talked about the secret space program, I think, on Unite Planet, haven't you?
Secret space program, yeah, we've done quite a lot on that with Andrew Johnson. He's well versed into it than I am, but nice guy, and I think there's definitely been a lot of space travel out there, like the TR-3B and other ways, because I think rockets have been, since 1950s, isn't it? Rocket technology's been out there, and yet we're still using rocket technology with getting William Shatner into space.
That's a big joke, isn't it? The fact that he was warping into space in the 60s and he still has to get on an old bloody candlestick just to get 60 miles up, and he didn't actually do a full orbit, which is a bit disappointing.
Exactly.
So I mean, there was a guy, I think his name is Andrew, I forget his name, and something he jumped to Mars or something through this hyper jump thing in this building. Andrew
Bayego or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I saw him on. Yeah. And it was him and something like Obama or something was one of the jumpers in this conspiracy weird world. Obama, as a young sort of teenage kid, jumped to Mars. So this guy claims with him through this time jumping thing, which was a bit like going through an airport security device or something. And then you appear on Mars the other end, and there's supposedly bases on Mars with super soldiers, and they were fighting creatures and all sorts of crap going on. Did you believe that, or you got an open mind about it, or you're dismissing it?
I'm open-minded, but a little bit extreme. And he's also, Andrew also said that he's going to be the next president of the United States, but then obviously it didn't happen because somebody else got there. I think it was Trump or something like that. But so he's predicting a lot of things. So on that basis, I think as it goes, really, but not really too much. Yeah. What's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. When you're making these predictions, and they're big predictions like that, and then they fall flat on their face, people aren't going to listen to you anymore, are they, really? But you wonder if these people, because they appear on mainstream talking about this sort of stuff, and so you wonder if they are deliberately put there to basically discredit the whole of the conspiracy theory paranormal movement to make us look stupid. Just make us even look more tinfoil hats than we already have. I'm not going to throw this tinfoil hat. I might need it later.
Need it.
But I mean, is there life in the solar system? I mean, Nick, with the Pleiadians, they're monitoring this part of space because they're policing this part of the universe or the galaxy. Do you think that they're aware if there's any life on planets within our solar system, such as Mars?
Yeah, they tell me that there's life on most planets in this solar system, but it tends to be either cloaked or underground.
Right. And so who would they be, these people that are living there?
Some of them, I've been told, there are survivors from the planet Maldek that blew up in this solar system many thousands of years ago.
Right. Now, that's something I haven't heard of. And so that was a planet in our solar system that's always existed, and it blew up.
Yeah.
Would that be the cause of what the asteroids are on the outer belt between Jupiter and Mars, the asteroid belt?
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Right, Maldek. And what caused it to blow up?
There's various theories. One put forward was there was a super volcano that was trying to erupt, and they tried to fire a lot of ocean water into the heart of the volcano to lessen its impact, but the whole thing just blew up.
They basically steamed it out and caused too much pressure, and the old pressure tipped over. And so people, it blew up, but did they? The survivors, what, they all went to Mars or something? They got in ships and escaped or something?
Yeah, they were able to take some of their technology with them and resettle.
And so they're all hiding underground in Mars bases and stuff.
Yeah, apparently there's quite a large population on Venus as well. Something that George Adamski talked about, but the COINTELPRO sort of rubbished all these claims, basically.
So this is a controversy of George Adamski, because he was claiming back in the 50s with his contacts that, yes, he's landed on Venus, or he's got visitors from Venus taken around in their ships and things. And yet the Russians and NASA have both sent probes allegedly to Venus, and those probes might last a few hours before they melt because of the temperatures. So how would they survive in those temperatures? Are they underground in some sort of protective cave or something?
Yeah, they've got full life support systems underground.
Right. Why would they choose to go there, though, rather than say come here, which is the Goldilocks zone of the solar system? I mean, surely it's easier for them to come and make a home here on Earth, where we got, moderate temperatures. They're picking the hardest place to go and live, I would have thought.
Yeah, some of them seem to prefer to live underground for some reason, whether the view it as more protected or something.
And so that would account for those people that are coming here to Earth, picking up people like George Adamski, flying them around and things like that. Yeah, interesting. Because Ben, you're aware of the Adamski claims. I mean, what was your thinking behind the George Adamski claims of having flights around from these Venusians?
I don't know. This was one of the first things that Timothy Good investigated. Of course, there is a lot of in the Adamski story which we know cannot possibly be true. When he was speaking first in the 1950s, people didn't actually know what the planet Venus was like. Since then, we've discovered that, thanks to the Venera program, that it's actually one of the most inhospitable places in the universe. It's very, very hot. There's a very dense atmosphere, and it's acidic. There's a massively acidic environment. No life as we know it could exist there. So it could be Adamski was making the whole thing up. I don't believe he made the whole thing up. It's, on the other hand, it could be that the aliens actually lied about where they were from. Extraterrestrials can be dishonest. They can mislead their contactees. Dr. Carla Turner actually did a very, very good presentation on this about the trickster aliens. It's possible they said Venus because, for reasons of their own, which I don't know about, they wanted George to think that they were from Venus. It could be something to do with human psychology and culture. I don't know. I always remember the alien in The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is an excellent film. It's a brilliant
Michael Rennie.
Yeah, he came from Venus as well.
Did he? I didn't realize that.
He came from Venus too. Of course, so now we know that since we learned more about these planets, what happens is in science fiction, aliens often describe themselves as coming from further away, in other planets that orbit other stars. There's this weird way in which the things they tell people, the things they describe, often don't make sense. Now, it's very easy to dismiss it. Skeptics will automatically just dismiss it. They'll say, well, this is because it's not true. This person is lying. This person's making it up. They're mentally ill. I don't think that's fair to say that, to denounce the entire subject on that basis. I don't have all the details to hand about what I've just said, but Timothy Good does an awful lot of things in one of his books. It's which one is this one? I think it's Alien Liaison. He's written so many, I can't remember which one, but he does a very good analysis of Adamski and other similar characters. People like Billy Meyer and etc. There's many others. It tends to be from the early period of the modern UFO era, the 1940s, 50s, 60s, rather than the present day. You get these kinds of characters.
Why do you think that is, Ben? Because it's quite disheartening, because I like the idea of certainly contacting positive aliens. I don't really want to contact reptilians or negative ones, certainly. But the whole trickster thing and the lying thing, it is prevalent. And I don't like it. And it, you know, why would we trust somebody or beings that are lying? It's quite disheartening.
It's extraterrestrials. You see, there are positive extraterrestrials. The ETs, people say, well, what are the aliens like? I get that question all the time. Are they good or bad? Well, it depends which one you mean, because aliens come in all shapes and sizes. I mean, there's virtually a taxonomy of them now. Greys, large, medium, small, reptoids, mantids, the ones that Simon Parkes has relationships with. You know, they come in all shapes and sizes, and they exhibit a wide range of behaviors. They seem to have many, many different agendas. They obviously have different origins, these creatures. They probably come from many, many different habitats. They may not necessarily be aware of each other, or certainly are not colluding with each other in their interest in our planet and the human species. But there are extraterrestrials. There are aliens who are very positive. The ones that Carol talks about are very positive. Mary Rodwell, the Australian researcher, very, very good hypnotherapist from Australia, specializes in children, the kind of aliens that children have had contact with, and that she says the aliens sometimes have to do things which are very, very upsetting for the contactee. For example, one woman, for example, got pregnant, and then she woke up one morning and found she wasn't pregnant. And the doctor put this down to a mistaken diagnosis. But the aliens had actually taken her baby, and they were and they actually took the baby in its unborn condition to their world, and that child is now living with the aliens in their world. And she's actually met him during her contact experiences. She's met her son. His name's Nathan, and that's what she's called him, and he lives with these aliens. But they do things like that. Are very painful and very emotional, very emotionally painful for the contactee. But the aliens themselves, these particular aliens that she talks about, appear to want to help us.
So why?
And that's why they're focusing on children, and these aren't necessarily the ones that are lying, though, Andy. There are many, many different kinds. Dr. Turner was talking about a particular variety. Mary thinks these ones are genuine, and they really, really do want to help us.
So with the Adamski ones, were they not good ones?
I don't know. I don't know enough about the particular subject. Whether it could be that they were, just because they weren't being 100% honest with us, doesn't necessarily mean they are malevolent. I don't know the answer.
It's quite a big thing. For instance, if I was an alien and I was talking to another race, if they were asking me things that were either too sensitive or that they were not advanced enough to know about, I would just say that I can't tell you these things. I would not lie. That's
what I would do too. But it's a bit difficult to put ourselves in the alien shoes, even if they have 2 feet. We don't necessarily. You see, it's essentially anthropomorphizing. I mean, we do this with other species on our planet. We have limited communication with some species, especially if you have a dog. And dogs, in particular, there's a lot of interspecies communication. Other animals, it's harder. Cats, you could have some kind of relationship with, but very often they will do something that seems bizarre and inexplicable, and you don't know why. And they can't really explain to you why. And indeed, we do lots of things which they themselves couldn't comprehend. And it doesn't necessarily mean we mean them harm. It just means that I think we got to suspend our disbelief and try not to make assumptions about them, which is tricky because I don't like being lied to either. I wouldn't tolerate that kind of behavior from another human. And I would want to know why if Adamski died quite a long time ago. But if the aliens came down to now, the first thing I'd say is, why did you tell him you were from Venus?
Yeah.
Why did you say that? It's not true. So why did you tell him that?
Maybe they stopped over on the way in. They come a long journey, and so that's like their services.
It could be they found a way to deal with the hostile environment, and they just have a base there. I mean, they have bases on Mars, probably.
Some of the ETs, that were in contact with Adamski wanted us to get rid of our nuclear weapons.
That would make sense.
That happens. A lot of them say that. A lot of them talk about nuclear weapons. That seems to be a theme.
I've also heard that the majority of alien sightings really ramped up after the first nuclear bomb was dropped. Like it was almost like the nuclear bomb that humans got developed and then dropped was almost like an alarm call, an alarm bell. It's almost like the phrase I heard is, "Oh no, the monkeys have got hold of the matches," kind of thing.
Yeah,
this
that's literally
Mars, wasn't it?
That's literally the beginning of the modern UFO era. Began with the first use of nuclear weapons. Thankfully, the only use so far in warfare. That's really. It seems to have ramped it up. Now, people say, well, the UFOs didn't exist before then. That's not true. They can be found throughout history, but there's absolutely no doubt we essentially started a global flap, which is still going on today, when we detonated those weapons. Yeah. And so,
now, in fact, if they did come from Venus, it would put by the explanation or the question of a lot of the skeptics have, well, how can they travel billions of light years through space? But if they were on Venus or Mars, they've only got a short journey, from their perspective. I know it can take us eight months to get a ship to Mars on a rocket or a probe or something, and maybe 6 months to Venus or something using similar technology. But I presume if you're in a kind of a mothership, flying saucer, tubular, cigar-shaped craft, or whatever you want to describe, that can traverse the solar system probably in a matter of days or minutes, I'd imagine. So that would kind of explain that. And I've always wondered whether the fact that they've always told us, we don't trust the government now with all these sorts of things of jibby-jabbies. Why should we always trust NASA and the government to tell us the truth about what's on the other planets? Yes, we're presented with photographs and they show us the little data charts of temperatures and things like that. But who's to say that's being made up? Just to, we've had the idea of the I forget the people that did this thing where it was like an investigation by this university when NASA was first set up to say, how would the public react if NASA encountered life on other planets?
The Brookings report,
yeah. So they basically said, you shouldn't tell them, in a nutshell, keep it quiet, which was almost like the premise for 2001: A Space Odyssey, when they found the monolith, which ironically, we were talking about monoliths this time last year. They've all kind of dried up now, haven't they? Those monoliths.
Oh yeah,
because
and I've one of them for what they.
We never found out what the hell that was about as well. That's really quite annoying.
I can actually comment on the somewhat you said. The basis, the fact that the aliens might have a presence in our solar system is to be expected if you consider the long distances they would have traveled. Of course, they're not using rockets. They're using something more sophisticated. It's possible that we ourselves have developed that as in the secret space program we were talking about earlier, the TR-3Bs. We may well have developed some capability in that field. But there are lots of places they could go, and the planets of the solar system, they could easily hide there. I think the most obvious place we should look would be the dark side of the moon, which is as it's called, in other words, the far side, to give it its proper name, because it receives sunlight in the same way the near side does. In fact, it has phases, just like the near side. But it's a place where there's like several million square miles of real estate. There's a lot of room there on the far side of the moon, and it's one of the few places in the universe which is completely invisible from the Earth's surface for a reason other than sheer distance. And it's right next door. In cosmic terms, it is right next door to the Earth. It's the perfect place to go. You're completely out of sight of the Earth. You can just do whatever you like there, and you could send down smaller ships down onto the Earth anytime you like. So, indeed, several NASA people, and one of them's just died, actually, Donna Hare. The other, Carl Wolf, actually died a few months ago.
A few years ago.
Yeah, they've actually said that they were actually contractors working for NASA, and they saw photographs that were taken by probes, which were essentially airbrushed. They were edited before they were published, but they actually showed artificial structures on the far side of the moon, which means was built by whom or what? I mean, was it part of the secret space program, or was it someone from further afield?
Yeah,
because a recent photo from China, from a photograph of the moon fairly recently, that they describe as a hut on the moon.
Oh yeah, like pizza hut.
Yeah, literally. I mean, they call it a hut on the moon, but it's literally like a square looking building that shouldn't be there. That was a Chinese.
That's where the little Chinese guys in there operating the remote controls for the rover.
Yeah. I'll make a quick comment on the time travel thing as well. When people talk about time travel, people are mostly talking about the physicality of kind of like in a Star Trek kind of way, kind of dematerializing and then rematerializing in a like a different time zone. So I would say, so far as Ben's understanding goes, I would agree that physically it's going to be very difficult to physically go back in time. But what about consciousness? What about if we view like the way that a lot of kind of the spiritual community, and even kind of like from spirit and from guides and stuff, talking about there's no such thing as time, that everything is happening at the same time. So instead of physically going back in time, what if your consciousness can go back in time, i.e. remote viewing and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I would say that's possible. I mean,
funnily enough, there's
go on, Ben. Yeah,
I was going to say that an experiment has just been done in Australia, in which it has revealed that at the quantum level, at least in not physical objects, but information can, it appears, go back in time. It's a variation of the famous double slit experiment, which seems to depend on the observer effect. But they have actually noticed now that not only does the observer effect apply, but the particles seem to know in advance what's going to happen, whether the observer effect is going to be there or not. Before, they should do as if they have that information passed back in time to them from the future.
Going back to the Chinese hut on the moon, if people go to sky.com, news.sky.com, and search for Chinese scientists spot mysterious hut on far side of the moon. So that's interesting. Talking about the far side of the moon, as Ben was talking about. So they're apparently scientists and engineers working on the Chang'e 4 lunar mission are going to investigate an unusual object using the U-22 Jade Rabbit rover. Reading down,
it 3 months to get there. Apparently, it's only 250 feet away, but they have to take all that time, 3 months, traversing over the moon very slowly.
So there's a possibility they're saying that it could be an artifact of the low quality image. So an artifact is like when you see glitches, if there's a TV or news report and there's like somebody doing a remote report, and sometimes the news feed quality, the information going over the airwaves or the internet, whatever you want to call it, isn't quite on point, then you can get kind of glitches and anomalies.
Yeah,
and
pixelated and stuff.
Yeah. But looking at it, and I think I've put it in the chat room so you can have a look at it. Make up your own minds. To me, it just looks like a very square, odd shape on the surface of the moon that should be.
Bob Exler as well, a former NASA mission specialist, was once at a Quest International conference in Leeds, and I put a question to him about the far side of the moon, and he confirmed that he'd seen NASA photographs showing artificial constructions on the far side as well.
Right. Yeah. So that ties in with the LRO pictures that Carl Wolf was talking about, because the story behind Carl Wolf that we mentioned earlier, sighting objects on the far side of the moon, was that he had been asked to go into this building, which he thought was NASA, he said, but it was NSA, and he kept thinking it was NASA, but he said in hindsight he realized it was the National Security Agency, which is like the FBI or that equivalent. But they were basically in that building receiving pictures from one of the early LROs, that's the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiters, that were being flown up to the moon in the mid-60s to photograph every part of the moon, basically to find landing spots. There are proposed Apollo missions at the time and other craft that they wanted to land there. And this Carl Wolf was sent in to repair a piece of equipment that was causing a bottleneck of all the pictures coming back. And because the normal guy that would normally fix it, he had to attend a family funeral or something. And so he was called in as like the standby technician. So he went in there, and whilst he said to the people, well, I can't fix in here in this dark room. You've got to take it out down the lift and put it out to my laboratory in the next room or something. So that's what they did. And whilst he was waiting for them to do that, he got talking to another guy that was there, and it was just him and this young guy technician by themselves. And he sort of said to him, by the way, we found a base on the backside of the moon. And Carl Wolf said instantly he knew that their security had been breached. They had broken security protocol by talking about this to each other. So he kind of got really nervous, but the guy proceeded to tell him and show him the images. And he said, I saw things that looked like mushroom-shaped buildings. I saw spheres and rectangles all grouped together on the backside of the moon. And it was a lunar base of sorts. And he said a few minutes later, someone did come back into the room. So they kept quiet about it and they just carried on as if nothing had happened, basically. And he said he expected to see something on the 10 o'clock news or 6 o'clock news that night talking about it. And he said, and here I am 30 years later, now telling you the story. And what he meant by 30 years later telling you the story was he was actually at the Disclosure Project of 2001 with Dr. Greer, I think Stephen Greer, who had hosted it. So he was disclosing that story after 30 years of keeping quiet about it, basically. So yeah. And
so talking about things being disclosed years afterwards, I'm going to drop this in. You've probably seen this. This is just mind-blowing. And I'm going to get a quick image of it. Bear with me, folks. So if people would like to go to dailycaller.com, this is where I found it, but it's on lots of other different sources as well. A disc-shaped craft has been spotted crashing on Mars. Now, what this is about, basically, a South African researcher has gone on some NASA footage from 2006, so quite a few years ago, and he's found this image of what can only be described as, and if you guys want to go into the chat and have a look at that and have a look at that image, that looks nothing else to me other than a disc that has skimmed along a surface and then come to a stop and embedded itself into the surface of Mars. That is a round disc. It is not a rock formation. It is too uniform. And those, I'm sorry, that is a skid mark. That is
when was it discovered?
Like, yeah.
When was it discovered?
Well, this report is December the 10th of this year.
Okay.
December the 10th.
Does it say where he found it on the images of Mars?
Let's have a look. See, he said he was searching. Also on coasttocoastam.com, there's reports.
Because I'll tell you what, they might claim it is that, remember, they've got these rovers that are landing on Mars as well, and basically as they're approaching the surface, they eject their heat shield, which is a disc-shaped object,
right? And
that falls to the surface. So. Yeah, it could be an absolute genuine disc-shaped thing, but it might be actually belonging to NASA.
No, it's too far away. It's at the Candor Chasma, which is in the Valles Marineris system. I've looked into this.
Unless it's from previous missions to Mars. You see,
there's
like Viking or.
There's been no mission close enough for that to be explained as the heat shield. There's I'm familiar with this particular story up to a little bit, although I have not seen this news article that Andy just posted. But to me, that does look just strangely like something has cut. It looks like something's hit the ground and it's embedded. And you see this with aircraft that crash. You see this kind of pattern, that's what it looks like. I mean, obviously the skeptics will say, no, it's not. And to be honest, unless we get close to it and examine it, there's no way of knowing. It's like Cydonia. There's been no space agencies proposed a mission to land something, a rover or anything else in the Cydonia region where the face on Mars is, where all those pyramids are and things like that. And so despite Richard Hoagland knocking on the door every 5 minutes saying, are you going to send a craft there? You should land something there, So really that's what we need to do. That needs to be examined closely, and hopefully that, I mean, who knows? I was going to say that obviously the cover-up, there's a cover-up that will stop that from happening. But I mean, times are changing now. You never know. With this new climate of ufology we have at the moment, it is possible that we will find out more about this particular subject. But we'll see. I can imagine what the skeptics will say about this. They'll just say it's an odd rock formation. There's been several other strange things on Mars, actually. Mars is full of anomalies like this. It really is. And Mars is a fascinating planet in that respect.
Having a look at the heat shield thing, I think what we'd need to do, we'd need to find out if a heat shield was ejected in the vicinity.
Yeah.
What I know, from what I know, there's we can just look on the map and see where the Mars missions are.
Because NASA wouldn't know where all their heat shields were anyway, would they? They could say, oh well, Viking came down at this area, at that angle, at that speed, and its heat shield went, and it could have fallen 300 miles in an area where, and remember the Viking probes of 1976, Viking 1 and 2, were not rovers. They just, once they landed, they were stuck in their area the whole time. So, they would have an idea of perhaps where their heat shields could have landed, and they came down by parachute as well. And the thing is, they are sending craft to Mars that haven't quite made it. There's some that have come down and they never landed successfully. So that could be something to do with those ones that were lost, for instance. I'm just putting the other side of the coin. You know, we could say, yes, it's generally a crashed saucer. It does seem to be a disc-shaped object, but it could be part of a mission that's failed. You see?
Yeah, I think you're right, Neil. I think it's good to look at all possibilities, including rational. In fact, we should be looking at the rational first before we jump.
Yes, exactly. Rule out the rational, like Sherlock Holmes, if you know, and then come back to the woo stuff at the end if all those explanations don't come up with the ghost sort of thing.
Guys, do you mind if I'm now very, very pedantic indeed?
Be pedantic, Ben. Go for it.
But this is it's a habit
pie first.
The term rational explanation. And it's a habit word that Steve Mera is always using. But there's no such thing as a rational explanation. There are only rational methods. They're a skeptic explanation. I think when people say rational explanation, they mean non-UFO, alien, paranormal sort of thing. Now, you could arrive at that conclusion very rationally or irrationally. A lot of skeptics jump to it's not aliens, it's just a weather balloon. And they do so very irrationally indeed. So, in a sense, the weather balloon story for Roswell is not a rational explanation. I think the alien hypothesis is a rational explanation. So, I've just looked on the map. Kandor-Kazma is actually not it's not far from the Opportunity rover, but it's still far enough away, I would say, for this not to be described as the heat shield. Obviously, this is also the heat shields have been jettisoned before. I mean, the Perseverance heat shield did actually land a few miles away from where the rover was. However, it didn't bury itself in the ground like this. It's obviously this is something that's very solid and very, very heavy that has hit the ground at a very high speed.
What height does it eject? Do you know?
The heat shield, it ejects that first of all.
Yeah,
before it sends out the parachute, the drogue parachutes and things. So it's literally as it's broken through into the first part of the upper atmosphere.
Right.
Then it ejects the heat shield. And well, each one is slightly different. It depends which craft we're talking about. But a general thing is that it ejects the heat shield once it's broken through to the atmosphere. Then it fires, I believe, rockets to slow it, or air brakes or something to slow it down a bit, because it doesn't want the parachutes to be ripped off, I presume. And then at a certain height, don't know what it is, the drogue chute is sent out, and then the main parachutes are deployed. Mars has a very, very thin atmosphere, remember. So there's been lots of questions whether those parachutes could actually work in such a thin atmosphere.
Oh, this is a good one. I'm gonna put on two images that I found, because I'm just kind of like going on a bit of a trawl here as we're talking. This one I don't think is paranormal, but it's an interesting thing of this. You know, the paradoiler.
Paradolia, yeah.
So
that's a planet on the outer fringe of the solar system.
Can I give you a bit of an update? I've just done some very, very thorough, in-depth research into this subject. In other words, I've wikied it.
Yeah, of course.
the Opportunity rover landed at the Meridiani Planum, and which is a flat area. It's not within the Kandor-Kazma, and there's actually a photograph of it. Close to its discarded back shell. Now you can actually see it. So, in other words, that part of the craft has been accounted for in that respect. I'll just put
what can we search for, Ben?
Let me give you a link.
Okay.
There we go.
Because with these latest rovers, they came down on these sky cranes.
It's on the top. It's on the top right. You can see the Opportunity rover.
Right.
And the sky cranes were basically flying craft that had rocket motors on, like a lunar module, if you like, that would hover above the atmosphere. It would lower the rover down by a cable, and when it touched down safely with the cables would then detach, and the sky crane would go shooting off another 300 feet and maybe crash half a mile away. But they are not disc-shaped.
Now, this is quite interesting. The link that you've given me, Ben, the heat shield that has landed looks very soft and almost like tinfoil and completely crumpled. It is no longer.
It would be
the disc
crumpled, I
shape.
would have thought. Yeah.
Absolutely crumpled.
Yeah.
Not so in the alleged flying saucer crash, which looks completely solid, heavier, and intact.
It has literally dug itself into the ground. It must have been going quite fast. It must be quite solid. It doesn't look broken. It doesn't look like it's split apart.
Is there L plates on it?
It could be the aliens just.
To the skeptics, we need to say, okay, if it's not a heat shield, well, unlikely to be a heat shield because it's the image shown is not crumpled up and there's a massive skid. And if you notice on the one of an actual heat shield, there's absolutely nothing below it in terms of impact. There's no impact crater or skid marks or anything. So with the one that's kind of allegedly crashed, what is it? A
Martian mince pie, I think. Still in its tin foil. Could be the civilization that Nick was talking about that live underground in Mars. Do you think it could be that, Nick, maybe?
Yeah. Elena Danan talks about them in her latest book called We'll Never Let You Down as well. Says there's quite a civilization underneath on Mars.
And what? And the Martians are not going to let us down? Is that what she means?
Is it Rick Astley?
This ET contact she made from a galactic federation called Val Thor.
Oh, right. Would that be Valiant Thor, the same one that years ago?
That was the alien at the Pentagon, wasn't it? The guy who...
That's the guy, yeah.
Is he still lurking around then? I think
it's either him or his successor, yeah.
Right.
That was an interesting story because there are photographs of this guy and his friends.
A big meeting or something.
And they've never been. The skeptics have said, "Oh, these are just ordinary people. They probably hired models or people like that." They've never been traced. Yeah. And there's very, very clear photographs, including close-up facial photographs of these people. They look human. To be honest, I would just say they were normal people. Yet they can't be traced.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. Who else will never let you down? Or turn around or desert you would be Rick Astley, of course.
That's his ship on Mars.
Oh, get me coat.
Yeah.
We should go and live on Mars, actually. Well, at least he's not producing any music anymore, so he can stay on the Earth now.
Going back to the pareidolia thing, this is quite funny. So if you go into the chat box for people wanting to look at this, just Google Sasquatch or Yeti on Mars, and you'll come across an image that's kind of like orange, obviously kind of red Mars surface, and almost like a statue or some being of Sasquatch.
Is that with its arm out?
With its arm out, yeah. I don't think that's an actual being. I think it's just like a rock formation or something, but it is kind of interesting how our minds interpret things. However, this is an even more interesting one. If people want to have a look at domes on Mars, now this one is a really strange one. If you want to have a look at that black and white image, just type in, for anyone kind of like wanting to do this, type in alien dome or building on Mars ? That there is no way that is a natural rock formation. So what the hell is it?
You know what that looks like? You know that thing that Andrew Johnson used to show, the picture with the icy thing inside a crater, the big ice dome thing inside a crater, like a big Buckminster Fuller type dome.
A bit like Eden Project in a crater.
Yeah. And then later on, there was another photo where it disappeared.
Yeah.
That looks like the same thing. Well, something very similar taken from ground level.
Yeah. Yeah.
My goodness, that's weird. That is. Now that, Andrew, I know about the sedimentary Sasquatch, that thing you chose. I think that is just a rock formation because they're like two different photos of it. Another photo was taken like 2 days later, and it's in the same place and it hasn't moved.
Well, that definitely is
but that is weird.
I would say if you, I think you're absolutely right, Ben. If you could send like a rover to that Sasquatch one and take different angles, you'd absolutely see just rocks.
It looks like R2D2's head just poking up from the surface, doesn't it?
But if you sent a rover to that dome thing from any angle, that will still be a dome with what looks like windows.
That's it. I'd be curious to see. Incidentally, the Changi rover actually, if it takes 2 days to get to this hut thing on the moon. Sorry to go back to that now when you're in mid-flow, Andrew. That was on Tuesday. That news story came out on Tuesday. So has it got there yet? It's been more than a week. I
think it just gets censored.
They got there and they took a photo. Yeah. They've decided not to publish.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
But they will. It's going to take like 3 months to get there, apparently, is what I heard, because it's such a slow-moving vehicle.
It says here, No, surely not. It's not that slow. It says here it's 80 meters. That's European, but it would take 2 or 3 days to get there.
Really? No, I thought it said 2 or 3 months.
It just says that in the article. Maybe it is. But
I think it is.
All right.
Yeah.
But either way, if it is just 2 or 3 days, well, it's been more than a week now.
Yeah.
Is it solar powered?
So has it got there yet? If it's just a lump of rock, why don't they just show it as a lump of rock?
They should still be able to get pictures now they're a bit closer, even if it's still going to take 3 months.
Is it solar powered?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because what I would say, if it's solar powered, unless they've got a massive, great big screen, it might be that to be like energy saving. That's why it's maybe going slower.
It depends on the phase, because it could be in shadow. Because
Right.
it might have to wait like a.
They
2
probably have
weeks
to plot a course, don't they, to carefully avoid shadows so that they don't run out of juice.
But they can't do that when the lunar phase is actually in quarter or half. It depends what the phase of the moon is and where this thing is. But the far side of the moon has phases just like the near side.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, if it could be that's the explanation. But if it is just a lump of rock, why don't they just show us one closer up? It'd be a good follow-up story, wouldn't it? And
because
if they're
it's
not,
a very square lump of rock, isn't it?
If they're not, and this just didn't disappear, then obviously this could be something they don't want to publish. It could be the initial story was leaked out or got out by mistake, and then they said, "Oh God, what are we going to do now? Don't show them anymore."
It will get zooked.
Yeah, but anyway, sorry, back to Mars.
Because Rich Planet did a program on some of the Mars artifacts, didn't they? Planks of wood, rodents, that kind of stuff. Some are a bit wild, like you say, that effect, the pareidolia effect or something, and they were trying to work out whether the rodent was actually there. Because he had the theory, Richard D. Hall, along with the guy, Duncan, forget his name now, the guy that sort of spoke to him about it, brought it up, that it was actually filmed on Devon Island, I think, which is north of Canada. And that's where they think the Mars rovers could actually be, rather than actually on Mars. That was interesting because Richard wrote an entire book. He calls it his hypothesis, and I've read through it, and he seems to know what he's talking about. I mean, he says that he talks about the batteries and the motors in the rover and how they couldn't possibly work on Mars. In which case, have they set up a secret location on Devon Island? Because Devon Island, you could do anything you like. It's a huge thing. It's the size of England, yet no one lives there. So you could easily go there and not be disturbed if you wanted to do something secret. And maybe and there's a lemming. You see, lemmings live there, and there's this little creature. With the photographs of Mars, are they starting to show Mars with a blue sky now in more recent pictures? Some of them do, don't they? Yeah. Because
there's from what I understand, this is to do with what's the word? Color, not synchronization. Calibration, that's the word I'm looking for. Color calibration. So they were basically saying that photos of Mars were taken before where they show like a red sky and red Earth were because the color calibration wasn't quite right. So the blue sky ones are because it's been corrected. That's their excuse. That's what it is. Well, they have on all these rovers, and you don't always see them, they have actually a color chart. Which is what they have in broadcast. It's something that I've used many times. They're called color bars, and it goes through all the different colors: black, white, cyan, magenta, green, blah 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 blah. And basically, it's like when you white balance a camera for video filming or something. And as long as you've got white, you can actually use an oscilloscope to sort of check all these levels and make sure it's all in phase and corrected. And once you're satisfied that that is the color it is, then you pan the camera up to from the color chart that's on the rover up to the scene of Mars or wherever you are, and that should be the correct color. Right. But yeah, like you say, the original shots of Viking had a red sky, but the weird thing is that the original way around, when they first showed pictures from Viking on Mars, the sky was blue. And someone said, no, that's wrong. The sky is red. And they retweaked them to show it's a red sky. And we can all do that in Photoshop, can't we? We can just pull the cyan or the magenta across on a slider and turn it. And so for maybe 50 years, we were thinking that there was red sky on Mars. And the explanation was there was a lot of red dust in the sky, which was causing it. So we all kind of believed it. But the more recent pictures tend to show more of a blue sky, apart from maybe sunset pictures, you see. So
I think somehow they kind of dropped that idea, but not actually told anyone about it. Just quietly, discreetly changed the atmosphere a bit, and especially with youngsters now coming up and growing up with these Martian pictures more frequently available on the internet. Years ago when you had news at 10, you could only see them for maybe a quick 5-minute stint on the news at 10, 40 years ago. And that was your lot. You unless you waited for a book to be published 5 years later of Mars photos or something. But now these days they're all on the internet. You can go and look at your own pictures, and slowly these pictures have become more and more looking like Earth. And maybe this is where the accusation is that it perhaps is Earth. It's an incredibly difficult thing you'd wonder that the science of actually launching something from Cape Canaveral to get it right up into space, right through, and then landing it on a particular location on Mars. I mean, if it's true and they can get them there, it's an incredible feat to do, really.
I guess we're delving into the territory of the secret space program and that concept.
Well, I mean, they're saying they're claiming they're using space rockets. I don't know. What's your thoughts, Nick, on that? Because you have an interest in NASA anyway, don't you?
Yeah, I think there's quite a large secret space program, and it's been using recovered alien technology for several decades.
Yeah. Do you think they might be using it to get their craft to Mars, our conventional rovers to Mars, or do you think they're just using conventional rockets to get to Mars, or it could be a bit of both, maybe?
Yeah, I think some of the public stuff's more conventional, but they've definitely got a secret space program that involves Mars, and it's using higher technology gleaned from crash retrievals.
So basically, in a sense, these rovers going to Mars are just telling us basically nursery stories, really, because if they're already there with their secret crashed craft, and maybe we've seen photographs of them. Apologies, by the way, for those people that are listening on the Spreaker or any audio, and we're talking about photographs, but Andy has told you where you can find them on the internet, so you can follow along, children. Just listen for the bleep to turn the page. So basically, I mean, our hypothesis is that you can send rockets to Mars, you can put rovers on them, and that's going to be widely exposed to the mass public, and to say this is where we are with our technology. We can get ships to Mars, rocket technology. It takes 18 months or 6 months, depending on where Mars is at the time of launch. And we can put little rovers and fly helicopters now around them. But all along, behind the scenes, flying along beside these craft, or presumably overtaking them, is fleets of super soldiers or whatever they are, landing on Mars to fight secret reptoids or something, whatever might be there. I mean,
there was a guy called Ted Lauder on a Nexus presentation once, and he said, for many decades now, we've had no need to put our guys up on the top of hot rockets, because we've got this other technology, basically.
Yeah.
The annoying thing is we'll never know the truth on this unless they come out, and they probably won't. So everything is speculation, and that really annoys me.
It's called secret space program.
Well, this is it. It's like in Kelvedon near me, there's the decommissioned GCHQ nuclear bunker. It's called the Essex's secret nuclear bunker. It's with massive signs saying this way to the secret
bunker this way. Yeah. I mean, that's it. I mean, they're all right to tell things that are decommissioned now, and it's old hat because we've got nuclear weapons that far superseded those ones we had of the 70s. And so those things are no longer required. And people pretty much knew that we had nuclear bunkers anyway. We just didn't quite know the location of them. So when they are decommissioned, I suppose there's no harm in saying, this is where we had this one, this is where we had that one.
Yeah.
But when you start talking about secret space programs that are taking ships or people to Mars, people are going to say, well, how come you're using this secret technology? Where's it come from? How come we've got these rockets? Why aren't you using the rockets? And that opens up a whole host of questions that they don't want you to ask, basically.
This is why you cannot separate the UFO issue from the free energy anti-gravity issue. That's the thing, because a lot of these, it's inevitable that there's going to be some link because of the research done at places like Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, into the Roswell wreckage and things like that. And even though humans have developed these things as well, from what we gathered from witnesses, people like Mark McCandlish and Edgar Fouché, the people who Rich Planet has done many videos on this, it did come partly through analysis of physical debris, extraterrestrial debris. And that's good. So, as you said, you can't really kick over one domino without the rest of them falling in that situation.
Just take a quick break here, guys. We got some words of wisdom from our friends Philip and Ronnie Kinsella. So we'll just take a listen to them for a second. So welcome, Philip Kinsella, once again to the Paranormal Peep Show Christmas special. And how are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you, Neil, and thank you very much for inviting me back on your wonderful show. Thank you.
And how are you doing? What you've been up to this past year? It's gone so quick. It only seems like the other day we were chatting to you.
Yeah, well, I've been punching out. I punch out articles, and I've had a few published in some really big UFO magazines, and and I'm working on 2 new books at the moment. I mean, they're coming along nicely, so hopefully they will be finished by the end of 2022. And we'll see how that goes. So I've been kind of busy, like researching and writing, and putting some new projects together, and of course doing the radio show as well. And also next year, Ronnie and I are, as you know, going to the OLM conference, the Outer Limits conference, and also been invited to Las Vegas, to Bally's, for the UFO Mega conference there. Bob Brown from the USA has invited me and Ronnie to do a talk, lecture, and hopefully we'll be meeting up with Dr. Irina Scott and a lot of other UFO luminaries while we're there. So we're really looking forward to that.
Excellent. And your books will be out by then, presumably, for when you go out there. So you better promote them, maybe.
Yeah, we the one that I've got out at the moment, the recent one, You the Public Deceive, the Grand UFO Deception. There'll be copies delivered to the hotel, and I'll be doing book signings there. But the other 2 projects won't be finished until later 2022, and of course submitted one of them to a publisher, and the other one, well, we're not sure about that yet. What's going to happen with that? But we'll see how it goes.
And so how do you think the year has gone? Obviously, we're talking about next year, but how do you think this past year has gone? We've had the UAP kind of small disclosures where the government are admitting that they're looking at them. And now I've just read recently that the Pentagon are now going to set up kind of a task force to investigate them further. I thought they had all these things. Is it another one they're setting up?
Yeah, well, it's like anything. I mean, we're told one thing, but really there's something else going on. They've been analyzing and studying this subject for decades. I think in light of the release of this document of recent, we're seeing now that there's pressure for them to be seen to be doing something. So from the public's perspective, and certainly with researchers, and they know that there's many UFO researchers and psychic researchers, whatever, out there, the pressure's on for them to be seen to be doing something. And what really made me laugh about this, that just before this report hit the headlines, and it was quite a disappointing report at that, most of the celebrities were coming out to obviously bump up their profiles. Oh, I believe in UFOs, and suddenly they become an expert. That really that mantle has to be given to all of those researchers that have remained in the background fighting for this disclosure, not the celebrities. I'm sorry, I'm going to be very honest about this now, because it's not about them, it's about the researchers that have been putting their heart and soul into this. So that's something that kind of grated me and annoyed me, but hopefully we're seeing an opening, more of an understanding, and more of the psychic component, which is, as you know, Neil, back in the 80s, anyone spoke about psychic phenomena or indeed UFOs, it was poo-pooed, and they were treated as 2 separate entities. We're now beginning to realize, myself and yourself and Ronnie as well, most definitely, dealing with those components, even the way back in 1996, with a theory that I had, a revolutionary theory with regards to a certain aspect of the greys and consciousness. It's interesting to see this all developing. So, I mean, there is hope now. I think we're moving in the right way, very slowly, but it's a lot more open than it had been before.
Yeah, absolutely. The world is turning around and continually changing, and things we thought wasn't possible 10 years ago are suddenly becoming possibilities. So
yes,
everything's changing so quickly these days. It's hard to keep up with in one way, it's becoming a darker world, I think,
Yes.
but
Oh,
also
definitely.
we're lifting the lid on many things that I think they've always known about these things, but we're starting to get a peer into the box of these delights. Whether it's a
Yeah.
good thing or bad thing, I don't know.
Well, I always say that, there is a struggle, whether or not you call it light or darkness, and those echelons, those that are trying to maintain their power, their stranglehold over the slaves, the populace, you can see they're struggling now to maintain their control, but it's all cracking and breaking apart. This is why we've got all this disruption and disclosure coming out now, because I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that, we want the truth and we want to know more than what we've been, programmed to believe. But that's an entirely different subject, but something that we're all passionate about. But there has been a darkness that's covered the very lands of this world. But I think that this light is starting to pierce through, and people are waking up, and especially with just recently work situations where people were, they were slaves. Now people are waking up and thinking, I don't need this anymore. I'm fed up with this, treading this mill over and over and over again, and getting nowhere by making the person in charge fat and rich.
Tied to the wheel of another man's dream, I remember someone put it once, which was quite apt. And I think, you're right. People are starting to wake up to that as well.
Yeah.
So we're going to break off our chains, hopefully. So you presumably got a kind of a ghost story for our Christmas special. I mean, it's a personal experience that you've had, isn't it?
Yes, and this was recorded in the book that you were instrumental in helping me with, Guardians of the Dead, which has the cover of your super duper artwork of the angel and the mirror. And it's interesting that I wanted that for the cover because the mirror said everything to me. We had a colleague and friend at work, and his name was Gareth, and he was dying from cancer, and he was age 20 when he passed on June the 25th, 1999. It's very upsetting for all of us seeing this healthy young lad deteriorating. And before he passed over, I said to him, Gareth, would you be able to do something for me? Would you be able to show yourself to me after you passed? Now, bearing in mind, he'd read an unpublished manuscript of mine called The Eternal Cosmic Corridor, so he kind of knew where I was coming from. And, I thought he'd be upset by it, but he said, no, that's sure. He said, but how do you expect me to do it? And I said, I don't know, maybe you'll find a way. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll beam down like they do on Star Trek, because he loves Star Trek. Well, the funeral came and went, and later that year, I went into Mill Street in Bedford. There was an author there, a local author, Richard Wildman, a lovely man. He wrote books on Bedfordshire, and he had this secondhand bookstore. And I'd always go in there, scouring the occult section. And so I went in there at this particular time in late 1999, and this book fell off the shelf, and it was called Reunions by Dr. Raymond Moody, who was an eminent neurologist and also a near-death experience researcher. And I read the book, and it said about how you could contact the dead by using mirrors. This is nothing new. It's something that the ancients had used, the Egyptians, and going back even further. So I decided to try the experiment out. So I set the mirror out in the living room, and it was a tall, long mirror. So I had to set it at an angle so that my face wasn't staring into the mirror. So it's reflecting the ceiling. And I turned off the lights and had these kind of like little candles. You've got to be careful with candle lights, but very small candles to give a little bit of illumination. And when you stare into the mirror, you have to think of the person you want to come through, but your eyes will deflect from the mirror. Well, I did this for about 40 minutes, and all I got was the face of Thomas the Tank Engine in the mirror. And I thought, well, I have no connection with Thomas the Tank Engine. I don't know what the hell that was about. So I put the mirror away and thought it was failed. That winter, always happens in winter with me, 1999, I came back from work. I went into the kitchen, and where our kitchen is, we've got the conservatory doors, a small conservatory, then the outer doors to the conservatory. And I'm sitting in the chair looking through the glass and just reflecting, getting my breath back, catching my breath after a hard day's work, and catching the reflection of the mirror and looking at the clock that's reflected and seeing how it's just floating there. And all of a sudden, my attention was drawn to someone, a young lad, that was appeared to come from the garage door to our back garden. And I'm thinking that's impossible because the garage is locked and the back gate is hardly used. It's a big, thick, heavy gate's locked. And when I got up and the chap turned around to face me, it was Gareth. And he was wearing his cap, white T-shirt, blue jeans. I can still see it today. And he raised his hand up as if to say, what's the problem? And all of a sudden, when I got up, he started to sparkle like they do on Star Trek and disappeared. And I remember pulling the inside conservatory door back, and then going outside to open the back door, and he was gone. And I knew, and there was no verbal communication as you know, most people have. It was just visual. Now, most people will say you wanted this. This is a projection of your psyche. Rubbish. It was real. He was solid, and it was such a shock that I got up. I had no way of knowing, you know, what this was about. And then what happened was that he'd come through a medium, and she said, I've got this chap here who wore waistcoats and his name's Gary. I said, no, his name wasn't Gary, it's Gareth. She said, no, he's saying his name's Gary and he was a swimmer, blah, 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 all the rest of it. Well, anyway, the penny didn't drop until later on, because at that point I'd been working on a new book called Reaching for the Divine, and I'd mentioned Gareth in the book, but I changed his name to Gary. Now, how about that? So he knew. This is before the book was published, before it had found a publisher, Chaplin Publishing, and I thought, oh my God, what he's done is he's humoring me. So this kind of like gave me the impression that they don't lose their humor, or their sense of personality when they pass over. And there were a few dreams where he came through. On two of them, when I had two dreams simultaneously, one night after the other, where it was about my car, and the first dream was me and him in the car, and it's rocking on this big rock, and then it goes into lava. And the next day, there was another dream where I'm seeing the car from a distance sinking. So I checked my cabinet for my car, and the MOT back then was due on the day of the second dream. So he was giving me a warning about my car. So, and there was a problem with the car that had to be sorted, that would have been dangerous if it was roadworthy. So that's one of the many spooky things. I say spooky, but it was quite incredible, really. And that's in Guardians of the Dead. I'm sure I've illustrated it in that. I can't remember now. I'm sure I have. And certainly in Reaching for the Divine, that's not available anymore.
Wow, thank you. An incredible story. And you weren't, I mean, you talk about spooky, but you weren't frightened when you saw him appear in the back garden, though, I presume.
No, it was more of a shock, thinking that someone had broken into the property. But when I saw who it was and I could see him clearly, that was the most incredible feeling I ever had in my life. It was like, oh, and I know that spiritually that he was trying to say to me, I'm okay, what's the problem? I've done what you've asked. And also the fact that this led me then into the exploration of psychic phenomena. So yeah.
Excellent. That's incredible. Well, thank you very, very much indeed, Philip, for that lovely story, and for letting us know how you're getting on. And we'll take this opportunity to wish you a Merry Christmas and all the blessings for 2022. And obviously your great expedition out to Las Vegas next year. We wish you well with that. And please do come back to the Paranormal Peep Show next year and tell us how you got on. So for the time being, thank you, Philip.
Thank you very much, Neil, and a Merry Christmas to you and your team. Thank you.
So here is our next guest, Mr. Ronnie Kinsella, brother of Philip. And it's good to see you, Ronnie. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Neil. It's good to see you too.
And how has 2021 been treating you?
Oh, God, blimey. Well, I've been made redundant this year. All of us were. So I've just been spending the year writing, and I'll look for a job next year. I think just after Christmas I'll have a look. But I've been working on a book at the moment, science fiction. Excellent.
And what's that about?
Artificial intelligence. I know it's been done to death, but mine hopefully has a good twist.
And what's the title of the book?
Well, it's currently called She, the Quantum Queen. So I don't know if that will stick. I have sent it out to some agents in London just to see if they'll express any interest. If they don't, then I'll publish it myself. So it's, as I said, science fiction based on a corrupt government and a corrupt society, and things take quite a nasty turn for the worst when they entrust their powers into a very smart AI. As I said, it's been done to death, but mine has a twist. All is not what it seems.
Well, whoever heard of corrupt governments? It's not very realistic.
Oh, if only that were not true.
Well, he's obviously taking inspiration from the real world. And so how do you think your aspirations will shape up for next year? I mean, I know that you and Philip are going to go to Las Vegas
Yes.
Is it in the summer of next year?
I think it's March next
March.
year.
Oh, right, in the springtime. Okay.
Yes, always early. So we're going there, yes, to do a talk about UFOs and to promote my book published by Philip Mantle, The Digital Demon, which is autobiographical and also looks into the UFO paradox. It basically looks at every aspect of it. You know, it's not tunnel visioned. I am acceptable to many opinions, but one thing I've come to conclude at the moment, this might interest you, is the fact I'm looking into time travel, and I'm having my doubts about it now. I won't say much about it, but the actual principle of time travel, because there's a major flaw as far as I'm concerned regarding it. I want it to be true, of course. I'm not denouncing dimensions or UFOs being unreal, but time travel, there's a sort of an Achilles heel with it. So I've been looking into that. Of course, it's only theoretical, but it's interesting nonetheless. Of course, I wouldn't believe in it, because if I had a time machine, I'd go back to see the dinosaurs. I would love to, you know, especially the T-Rex. Love to see that thing hunt. But
well,
sadly, I've been thinking about this. And,
unless, of course, you take the perspective that time exists all at once and everything happens in the now. I don't know. That's something I've heard. So maybe with time travel, that is possible because you somehow leap across the now to another now. I don't know.
It wouldn't be time, then. It would be a reality of sorts.
Yeah. I think even when you jump from one reality to another, presumably you have to experience a kind of time. I remember Seth, the spirit guide of Jane Roberts. I say spirit guide in quotes, because he never called himself a spirit guide. He called himself the personality essence, no longer focused in the physical. But he was, for all intents and purposes to us mortals, like a spirit guide that used to channel through Jane Roberts, the author. Yeah. And he said that time exists all at once, but he says even where he is, on his level of reality, he experiences a sort of time. So I think it's just the way our world is, that we have to kind of experience one moment after another of sorts. But
yes,
he said the greater reality was that everything existed at once, which was kind of an interesting take on things, but mind blowing all the same.
Yes, but there's no such thing as time. Time is a man-made creation. Time is a mere measurement. Time does not exist. The universe doesn't pander to time.
Apart from when you're late for the boss.
Yes, under our own jurisdiction, of course. Yeah.
So, I understand you got some interesting stories to tell us, because we asked Philip about his interest in kind of ghostly story of a personal experience, and you've got one yourself, haven't you?
Yes, I've never seen a ghost or experienced anything paranormal in that respect. I've never seen any poltergeists. I've never seen anything of the sort, as we're speaking about ghosts. But something very bizarre happened to me. This is when our maternal grandmother died, just shortly after, I think perhaps a few days after she died. Of course, for any of us, it's upsetting when you lose someone you absolutely love. But I had this dream, and this is before I believed in the spirit world, because I didn't believe in it. I didn't even believe in UFOs, even though some odd things had happened to me. I needed a clout, you see, afterwards when I went to see this brilliant medium. But this is before all this. But she died. But I had this very strong dream, and it was like reality. So I wondered actually if it was a dream. It was my grandmother. I was basically transported to this woodland, and it was very beautiful. It was all lush grass and the bushes and trees. It was daylight. And up ahead, there was this little lane, and I knew I just had to follow this little lane in this woodland. So I followed it up, and there's a bungalow, not your conventional house bungalow. This was like an establishment, very posh. There are even cars parked outside. If I remember correctly, I can't completely be sure. I'm sure there were some cars parked outside this establishment. So I walked in, and I immediately got the impression it was a hospital. It was a hospital. And there was a formidable matron standing at a formidable matron, a very big woman, standing at this reception area. And I remembered speaking to her. I said, "Can I see Grandma?" Because I knew Grandma was in this establishment. I could hear this piano being played, this beautiful piano music. And the matron stood there. Okay, she said, you can see your grandmother for a time. So I walked in and I turned this corner. It's a huge room, part of the reception area. And my grandmother was sitting at a piano playing it. Now, she had died of cancer. So she was wearing this nightie and her eyes were slightly black, but she looked quite well. And of course, I gave her a big hug because she's tiny. She's like a little tiny Italian woman. She's a tiny thing. I grabbed her and I hugged her. I wouldn't let her go. And we wanted to go outside. Grandma said, I want to tell you something. So we went back to the matron and there were some other members of staff there. And we asked the matron's permission if we can go out. And she said, yes, of course, but not for long. And we respected the matron's instructions. So Grandma and I went out. Now we went back out onto this lane, and I think we turned right. There's this little brook, and there was this chair. Beautiful, absolutely, all of it beautiful. I couldn't see any sun. It was, I think, blue. There was no sun. And we went and sat down on this chair. And I said to Grandma, I've missed you and all that. She said, I know, loves. I know, loves. And she said, she took my hand suddenly. Now, this is very bizarre. I've never forgotten. Never. She took my hand and she looked at me. The next time I looked at her, it was very grave. She said, I'm going to show you something, loves. I'm going to show you something, and you must promise me you must never forget it. I said, I won't forget it, Grandma. She said, no, you must promise me you will never forget it. And I looked into her eyes and I promised. She took my hand. As soon as she took my hand, everything changed. I was back home with Philip. It was dark. It was our own house. And blow me, Neil, it was, I know it sounds ridiculous, it was an alien invasion. It was an alien invasion. The first wave of these things was coming over, and I quickly got down on all fours and crawled into the kitchen. The first and most paramount thing I needed to do was switch off the lights, because you feel exposed, you're prone. And Philip was crawling in after me. We managed to turn off the lights, and that's how it ended. And the strange thing about that is, I said I could hear piano music. I didn't know that my grandma, her wish was, after when she passed away, was to play a piano.
Wow.
I had no idea. So that's the only paranormal thing I can ever recount. As I said, I've never seen a ghost or a poltergeist. I believe in them. They're real, of course. Indeed, they are real. But I've never personally, but that affected me. Because the contrast from seeing her in this hospital, which I gather it's a healing center. If people have been damaged now, I learn that when they go over, they're slowly adjusted or acclimatized into what we call heaven. So that she was obviously there, being acclimatized or looked after.
Recouping, etc. Yeah.
That's right, yes. And the matron was authority. So, there was always respect there. There was order. So it showed me afterwards. I looked really into this. Thought about this, but the alien invasion was completely startling and such a contrast to that. But she was trying to warn me of something. Whether the alien invasion is symbolic of something else, I don't know. But that's all I saw regarding Grandma, and I gather that was heaven. So
Interesting. And has your grandmother ever come back through a medium later on?
Oh, yes. After that, I went to see a professional medium. Thank God she was a damn good one. And she brought her straight through. She didn't mention the dream or anything like that, but she brought her through. And then we just walked into spiritualist churches afterwards, because this is a slap in the face I needed, because I didn't believe in it. But I did after that, after seeing the medium, that the grandma would come through again and again and again. Then she went. It's as if she got her message across. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. She said to us she's going to wait for us when we cross over. So I think that's right. Quite strong.
Oh, that's nice.
Dear
Excellent.
old grandma, yeah.
That'd be the best welcoming into the next dimension that you could ask for, it, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I hope I don't come across that matron. She was very formidable.
Hopefully she's been promoted to elsewhere.
Or you wouldn't mess with her. But she was lovely anyway. She's just authority, So
yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Ronnie, for that chat and telling us that interesting story. Well, we'll wish you happy Christmas and wonderful New Year ahead for next year, because great success with your forthcoming book and
Thank
also
you.
the trip to Las Vegas. And fingers crossed for everything for 2022 for you.
Thank you, and a Merry Christmas to you, team, to you, Neil, and your wonderful team.
Thank you very much. All right. Bye-bye for now. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Philip and Ronnie, and happy Christmas to you guys, and wishing you all the best for 2022. So as we're coming into the last part of the show now, I think we'll do a bit of a round robin to find out what everyone's planning for Christmas and what they're going to do for next year. Andy, what are you going to do for Christmas and next year?
My response is going to be quite short, which is Christmas. I'm going to just sleep and just get drunk. That's
Okay.
pretty much it. I think kind of Boris is really, the way things are going, we might be heading for another lockdown. I hate using the L word, but it might be that way. And in terms of next year, I don't know, because it will depend on that L word. My events, the events that I do, very much depend on pubs being open and people coming to them. And the way things are going, it's a bit screwed up. So I don't know.
Okay. Cool. But also, it might depend on people whether they've got COVID passports or not as well.
Oh,
that's another thing you got to get through.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah. Okay. Nick, what do you plan on doing for Christmas?
Yeah, well, I haven't seen my family for 2 years, so I'm going to spend a week with my sister back in Carlisle. So looking forward to it.
Excellent. Brilliant. And what's your plans for 2022?
Hopefully crack on with some more contact reports and keep up the contacts.
Excellent. Oh, well, we wish you well with that, and stay safe and everything. Paul, with Unite Planet over there in Unite Planet Corner, you and Johnny, I presume, are going to have a lovely Christmas with your families, and you're going to get very, very busy with lots of things next year. What are your plans for Christmas?
Going to be with my family, and also going to see my mum, of course. And hopefully my brother will come up from London, and to what Boris has to say about all these lockdown stuff, like Andy just said. And also for the new year, I would like to get the website up and working, because our website is half and half at the moment. It's not fully working, so get that up, and then hopefully then get a Planet show on the road. Go out and get some guests. The speakers, maybe like Ben or anybody else that wants to do a guest spot for us. That'd be cool. So that's what I'm looking forward to for next year.
Excellent. Have a great Christmas then with Unite Planet.
Thank you. Thank you. What about you? What about you, Neil?
Me? Oh, I don't know. Well, I suppose I'll be building the Millennium Falcon here. That's what I'll probably do over the dead days of Christmas. Spending it with my girlfriend. My children live up in Scotland, so I hope to go and catch them maybe at the end of January. My son lives in Edinburgh and my daughter lives in Orkney. So we've got a kind of liaison together. I think we might all meet in Orkney or we might all meet in Edinburgh. We've yet to decide that, but that's what I plan to do in the early part of the new year. And I hope to complete my book, Encounters with Fairies, Ghosts and Spirits, which I've already done a sequel talk at Truth Seekers Northeast, trialed that earlier in October of 2021, called More Encounters with Fairies, Ghosts and Spirits, which is on this YouTube channel, Neil Peel, the Paranormal Peep Show. And so you can look at that if you want people that's interested. But I'll leave a lot of those stories for maybe if there's a sequel book as well, but we'll see on that, see how the first book goes. And just carry on doing artwork and producing our show and doing lots more research and hopefully getting out and about, meeting people, going to more conferences. Sorry?
Do you drive to Scotland when you see your kids?
I have driven to Scotland and to Orkney, but I don't tend to do that so much now. I tend to fly up there. It's much easier. I fly from Luton Airport. I leave my car at Luton Airport, fly up there. But when my kids were small, we would all drive up in the car together overnight. It would take about 12 hours.
Wow.
It was a a real knackering journey. I'd rather have missing time, to be honest. Ben, what about you for Christmas?
I'll be seeing my family and doing as much as I can. Unless I don't think there's going to be such a catastrophic lockdown within the next few days that something will prevent that. But obviously next year I have to ask the same questions that Andy does. How much traveling will I be able to do? But I do hope to carry on what I'm doing now. I do hope to be able to attend conferences, and I am available as a speaker. Hopefully I'll be joining you, Paul, and Johnny, and any other. I'm hopefully going back to Truth Seekers Northeast, and anyone else who wants to book me to speak on a wide array of subjects. It's completely free, so I won't cost you anything, and so please do bear that in mind if you're looking for someone to hire.
You're a free speaker, Ben. Is that what you're saying? A free
That's
speaker?
right. Well, if you can cover my travel costs, and probably I'll need accommodation for at least one night. But I say accommodation, someone's settee will do. I'm not fussy.
Yeah, and they show you around and buy you a nice meal.
Oh, they can do that if they like. Yeah.
Yeah, cool, excellent. Well, we wish you well with that. Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining us on the Paranormal Peep Show Christmas special. We've covered lots of topics, covering from the jibby-jabby, the covey-wovey, going into time traveling spirits using BBC computers, and Mars anomalies. So it's quite a lot we've covered. Great contributions from everyone. It's been really valuable information there. Great to get everyone's opinions and takes on it. And if you are listening on MP3, go to YouTube, and if you want to catch up with the images that we've been talking about, I will try and edit those into our video at some point. So stay tuned for that. Want to wish everybody well out there. Happy Christmas and a wonderful New Year. Stay safe, everybody, and thanks for watching us all on the Paranormal Peep Show Christmas special. Good night.
And if you do get any Santa Claus sightings or Krampus sightings, do let us know. That'll be a whole new show.
Send us some pictures. Yeah. All
Happy
right.
Christmas.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.